Hello and good afternoon, and welcome to the mains module for GS paper 3. Today we'll be starting with agriculture. This is the first class. If you can see and hear me, please write yes, and then we'll get started. So Saya, I'll check and get it done by today. All right. Perfect. So, किसी भी सब्जेक्ट को पढ़ने से पहले, जैसे now we are going to read agriculture, we have to do two things before we start. So before we start reading agriculture, the first thing we have to do is we have to see the syllabus of agriculture in detail. After we have seen the syllabus, we will see the previous year questions. After we have seen the syllabus and previous year questions, we will then move on to study the dimensions of the first topic. And the topic we are going to study today is land and land reforms. Okay, this is what we are going to study today, but after we have seen the syllabus and the previous year questions in detail. Okay, now, सबसे पहले let us take a look at the syllabus of agriculture. Now, in any question that in any GS3 paper rather, question numbers 3, 4, which are 10 markers, and question number 13 and 14, which are 15 markers, are part of agriculture. Right? So agriculture generally in the GS3 paper will have 4 questions. Question number 3, question number 4, question number 13, and question number 14. Now these are 10 marks each, so this is 20 marks. These are 15 marks each, so this is 30 marks. And its weightage in almost every paper is 50 marks. So the same weightage as economy, the same weightage as internal security. One pagers for internal security I'll upload by today. I think that I've made them. I'm sure they would be uploaded, and I'll get it done by tonight. Now the second problem is give me the PDF one day before. The economic survey came out yesterday. आपको दिखाता हूं why I can't give you the PDF one day before, so that you'll understand. This is the PDF for agriculture that we're going to study from, that has been uploaded, and this is from the economic survey that came out yesterday. Now, how do I give this one day before if this data was released by the government one day before? This is the problem in GS3, since it is a current affairs based thing and it is constantly evolving. That is why I have to include things that are recently added. And of course, you will also want that I studied the economic survey before I teach you agriculture, right? Now for the rest of this class, please hold your doubts and let's say focus on what we're doing. Okay, so agriculture has 4 questions every year, 50 marks in total. Now let's look at what the syllabus of agriculture is. So the syllabus of agriculture starts here, and there are 4 points in it. The first point is major crops and cropping patterns in various parts of the country, different types of irrigation and irrigation systems. So first thing we have to see in agriculture syllabus is crops and cropping patterns. Second is irrigation. Third is storage, transport and marketing of agricultural produce. So this is the third part. Then issues and related constraints. So it is again related to storage, transport and marketing. Then there is e-technology in the aid of farmers. This is the fourth part. Then issues related to direct and indirect farm subsidies. So direct and indirect farm subsidies, this is issue 5. Then minimum support prices. This year, most likely there is going to be a question on MSP, since it has been specifically mentioned in the economic survey, and there has been a farmers protest for legalizing of MSP. वो भी हम पढ़ेंगे इसी course में. Then next system is the PDS. So PDS is the 7th topic. PDS, its objectives, functioning, limitations, revamping. Linked to PDS is the issue of buffer stocks and food security. This is issue 8. Then there are technology missions, economics of animal rearing. So technology missions in agriculture is issue 9, and it is obviously related to e-technology in the aid of farmers, which is issue 4. And economics of animal rearing is issue 10. Okay, then there are two more topics. The next topic is food processing and related industries in India, their scope, significance, location, upstream and downstream requirements, and supply chain management. So this is topic 11. And land reforms in India. This is topic 12. So if you look at agriculture, it can be broadly divided into these 12 themes. And questions also, as you will see, are coming from these 12 themes, and questions are mostly direct. And although the questions are not very current affairs oriented, you of course need latest data and latest government schemes to answer them. तो अभी तक एग्रीकल्चर का सिलेबस इज दिस क्लियर सो फार? पहले ये बताओ, फिर हम एग्रीकल्चर के PYQs देखते हैं. Clear so far? Yes, no? Okay, wonderful. Up. Now let us understand the previous year questions of agriculture. Let's look at some previous year questions. Okay, this compilation of previous year questions is available on my website. It's directly from there. Okay. So, for agriculture, the first topic we saw was crops, cropping patterns, and irrigation systems. इनके questions देखते हैं. अब हमें जब तक हमने देखा कि यार क्रॉप्स क्रॉपिंग पैटर्न सिलेबस में था. सो इफ क्रॉप्स क्रॉपिंग पैटर्न्स वर इन द सिलेबस, डू आई हैव टू स्टडी द पैटर्न्स ऑफ एवरी क्रॉप और इज देयर अ डिफरेंट पैटर्न? ये चीज मुझे सिलेबस देख के समझ आएगी. अब फर्स्ट क्वेश्चन, व्हाट इज वाटर यूज एफिशिएंसी? ये डायरेक्टली आया फ्रॉम इरिगेशन एंड इरिगेशन सिस्टम स्टोरेज. रोल ऑफ माइक्रो इरिगेशन in increasing water use efficiency. So I understood that when I'm reading irrigation, I have to read micro irrigation and I have to read water use efficiency. Second question is allelopathy and its impact on major cropping systems. अब ये था bouncer question of that year, जो उस साल एटलीस्ट किसी को नहीं आता था. अब मैं आपको allelopathy पढ़ा दूंगा, but one or two questions like this come in the mains every year, and these are not ones we need to worry about. आगे देखते हैं. Vulnerability of Indian agriculture to the vagaries of nature. Discuss the need for crop insurance. तो क्रॉपिंग सिस्टम्स में ही क्रॉप इंश्योरेंस एंड salient features of PM Fasal Bima Yojana, also asked in 2016. Then in 2017 they asked major reasons for declining rice and wheat yield. तो मुझे यहां से समझ आया कि क्रॉप इंश्योरेंस is something I have to read. Then rice and wheat system is something I have to read. In the cropping system, how crop diversification is helpful to stabilize the yield of crop in the system. So there is also a question on crop diversification. So this is also a topic I have to read. Then Sikkim is the first organic state in India. Ecological and economical benefits of organic states. So cropping system में एक system है organic farming. तो ये organic farming के ऊपर question है. Then assess the role of National Horticulture Mission in boosting productivity, production, and income of horticulture farms. How far has it succeeded? So again, horticulture becomes a cropping system that I have to read. Now, how has the emphasis on certain crops brought about change in cropping pattern? तो ये देख लो, this is a broad question. Changes in cropping patterns कैसे हुई हैं? Right? How have cropping patterns in India changed generally? Now, this is asked specifically in the context of millets. And millets, जैसे आपको पता है, बहुत टाइम से न्यूज में है. This is a question of 2018. So I have to read the changes in the cropping pattern, and I have to read millets in specific. Okay. Then, how far is integrated farming system helpful in sustaining agricultural production? So integrated farming system also becomes a topic that I have to cover. Then elaborate on the impact of National Watershed Project in increasing agricultural production from water stressed areas. ऊपर मैंने देखा था कि माइक्रो इरिगेशन में भी क्वेश्चन था, वाटर यूज एफिशिएंसी में भी क्वेश्चन था, उसी से लिंक्ड क्वेश्चन आया वाटर शेड प्रोजेक्ट. नाउ how has India benefited from the contributions of Sir M. Visvesvaraya and Dr. M. S. Swaminathan in the fields of water engineering and agriculture science? Now ये भी हम पढ़ेंगे and ये science and tech से भी हम relate कर सकते हैं because वहाँ contribution of Indian scientists syllabus में है. So these are two things we have to read. Then suggest measures to improve water storage and irrigation systems to make its judicious use under the depleting scenario. So again water use efficiency, इसमें हमने watershed project और micro irrigation हम देख चुके हैं. Then major factors responsible for rice wheat system a success. In spite of this success, how has the system become a bane on India? अब देखो ये question repeated है. We have already been asked a question on rice wheat system. It is a similar question. 2021 is also the repeated question. How and to what extent micro irrigation would help in solving India's water crisis? Micro irrigation ऊपर भी आ चुका था, तो repeated topic पूछा है. 2022. What is integrated farming system? How far is it helpful to small and marginal farmers in India? This is also repeated. Explain the changes in cropping patterns in India in the context of changes in consumption pattern and marketing conditions. This is also repeated. So इस टॉपिक से जो लास्ट 4 क्वेश्चंस आए हैं 2020, 2021, 22, 23, मुझे इससे क्या समझ आया that they have probably already asked most of the things that they had to ask, but there are things like National Horticulture Mission. अब ये उस साल न्यूज में था. So in this topic I have to focus heavily on previous year questions because questions get repeated, and I have to focus on current affairs. This is the idea, right? ये बात समझ आई? या डू यू रियली ओके? आपको आर यू अनेबल टू हियर व्हाट आई एम सेइंग? समझ तो आ रहा होगा, आई एम अज्यूमिंग. शुड नॉट हैव बीन अ प्रॉब्लम. दिस सॉर्ट ऑफ मैसेजेस आर नॉट एक्सपेक्टेड यार. मतलब मैं आई एम इन अ थिंकिंग माइंड एंड यू शुड ऑल्सो बी इन अ थिंकिंग माइंड. एनीवे, तो मुझे यहां से क्या समझ आया कि प्रीवियस ईयर क्वेश्चंस आई हैव टू डू एंड करंट अफेयर्स आई हैव टू फोकस ऑन. अब नेक्स्ट टॉपिक देखते हैं जो लिंक्ड है, ई टेक्नोलॉजी इन द एड ऑफ फार्मर्स एंड टेक्नोलॉजी मिशंस. सो ई टेक्नोलॉजी इन द एड ऑफ फार्मर्स एंड टेक्नोलॉजी मिशंस. How can Digital India program help farmers improve farm productivity and income? What steps has the government taken in this regard? So Digital India is a technology mission related to farmers. Then various types of revolutions that have taken place in agriculture after independence, and how have they helped in poverty alleviation and food security? All right. How can biotechnology improve living standard of farmers? तो again science and tech से relate करके हम साइंस एंड टेक में भी पढ़ सकते हैं बायोटेक्नोलॉजी की स्पेसिफिक एप्लीकेशंस इन एग्रीकल्चर, या टेक्नोलॉजी मिशंस में भी पढ़ सकते हैं. प्रेजेंट चैलेंजेस बिफोर क्रॉप डाइवर्सिफिकेशन, ये क्वेश्चन भी रिपीटेड है. क्रॉप डाइवर्सिफिकेशन ऊपर आ चुका था. हाउ डू emerging technologies provide an opportunity for crop diversification? Now they link two topics in 2021. On the one side there was crop diversification जिस पे ऊपर क्वेश्चन आ चुका था. On the other side was कि emerging technologies crop diversification कैसे कराएंगे. Okay. How does e-technology help farmers in production and marketing of agricultural produce? ये चीज 2023 में पूछी है. And again, this is a repetition of the question above because e-technology in the aid of farmers and is something that has already been asked, right? And it is also directly from the syllabus. So ये भी एक ऐसा question है which is if we've done the syllabus well, I should be able to write. बट यहां से मुझे क्या समझ आया कि ये जो टॉपिक है ई टेक्नोलॉजी इन द एड ऑफ फार्मर्स एंड टेक्नोलॉजी मिशंस, ये उतना इंपॉर्टेंट नहीं है बिकॉज पे क्वेश्चंस कम आते हैं एंड दे आर डायरेक्टेड स्पेसिफिक क्वेश्चंस. नेक्स्ट, देन द थर्ड ब्लॉक वी सी इज फूड प्रोसेसिंग, स्टोरेज, ट्रांसपोर्ट एंड मार्केटिंग ऑफ एग्रीकल्चरल प्रोड्यूस एंड इकोनॉमिक्स ऑफ एनिमल रेयरिंग. इसके क्वेश्चंस देखते हैं. India needs to strengthen measures to promote pink revolution in food industry for better nutrition and health. Critically elucidate this statement. ठीक है, तो ये क्वेश्चन पहले आया पिंक रेवोल्यूशन पे. Next question. There is also a point of view that agriculture produce marketing committees set up under the state acts have not only impeded the development of agriculture, also have been a cause of food inflation. तो मुझे यहाँ पे समझ आया that APMC is something that I have to read in detail. फिर economics of animal rearing है. Question देखो. Livestock rearing has a big potential for providing non-farm employment and income in rural areas, suggesting suitable measures to promote this sector. So again, economics of animal rearing से direct question livestock rearing पे. Then, in view of declining average size of land holdings in India, so ये land का question है, average size of land holding in India, which has made agriculture non-viable for a majority of farmers, should contract farming and land leasing be promoted in agriculture? Critically evaluate. And if you know about the 3 farm laws, land leasing and contract farming were part of the new farm laws that were introduced. तो यहाँ पर again question उसी से linked है, and this has been a very long sustained issue in Indian agriculture. तभी ये question आया होगा. आगे देखते हैं. What are the impediments in marketing and supply chain management in industry in India? Can e-commerce help in overcoming these bottlenecks? Okay, I think this should be food processing industry. So again, with regards to food processing industry, they have asked marketing and supply chain management. Reasons for poor acceptance of cost-effective small processing unit. How will small food processing unit be helpful to uplift socio-economic status of farmers? So again, a question on food processing. Role of supermarkets in supply chain management of fruits, vegetables, and food items. So I've understood that supply chain management is something that I have to read in detail in context of food processing and also generally. देखो, policy taken by Government of India to meet the challenges of food processing sector. Again, direct question. Main constraints in transport and marketing of agricultural produce. Transport and marketing of agricultural produce was directly in the syllabus. वहीं से question आया. Challenges and opportunities for food processing sector in the country. Can income of farmers be substantially increased by encouraging food processing? So again, food processing, its relation to income of farmers and its relation to the challenges and opportunities that this sector has. Then, अब हमने देखा था फूड सिक्योरिटी का भी एक क्वेश्चन था. सो salient features of National Food Security Act. How has food security bill helped in eliminating hunger and malnutrition in India? Okay, then again 2022 repeated question. Scope and significance of food processing industry in India. Again 2022 repeated question. Bottlenecks in upstream and downstream process of marketing of agricultural products in India. So again, as you see here, questions are repeated. Now, next topic जो हमें देखना है वो है land reforms. अब land reforms पे आप questions देखो. Relationship between land reform, agricultural productivity and elimination of poverty. So land reform करेंगे तो इससे agricultural productivity बढ़ेगी, जिससे elimination of poverty होगा. ये relationship आपको establish करनी है. One. Second is discuss the difficulty in designing and implementation of agriculture friendly land reforms in India. तो मुझे क्या समझ आया कि land reform how it will lead to better agricultural productivity and removal of poverty, ये मुझे बताना है, and why it has been difficult. Then right to fair compensation and transparency in land acquisition, Rehabilitation and Resettlement Act 2013 has come into effect from this date. What implication would it have on industrialization and agriculture in India? तो लैंड में ही एक टॉपिक है लैंड एक्विजिशन, एंड दिस वाज ऑब्वियसली इन द न्यूज. उसी साल ये एक्ट न्यूज में आई थी, पास हुई, फोर्स में आई, उस पर बहुत प्रोटेस्ट हुए. तो 2014 में करंट अफेयर्स बेस्ड क्वेश्चन वाज आस्क्ड. देन रोल ऑफ लैंड रिफॉर्म्स इन एग्रीकल्चरल डेवलपमेंट, फैक्टर्स दैट हैव बीन रिस्पांसिबल फॉर सक्सेस ऑफ लैंड रिफॉर्म्स. तो पहले पूछा कि व्हाई वर लैंड रिफॉर्म्स डिफिकल्ट, then पूछा कि how were they successful. Obviously if some measure was taken by the government, there would have been some successes, some failures. तो मुझे समझ आया that for land reforms I have to understand their impact, their successes, their failures. Okay, Now, how did land reforms in some parts of the country help improve the socio-economic conditions of marginal and small farmers? So again, land reforms की successes ही पूछ लिया. पहले पूछा why were they successful? Now ये पूछा कि successful land reforms से how socio-economic conditions better हुई. But this is the question that was asked here. It is the same question, right? Then, objectives and measures of land reforms in India. How land ceiling policy on land holding can be considered an effective reform under economic criteria. Again, objectives and measures of land reforms, right? So same question. इन्हीं measures में एक measure जो हम आज भी पढ़ेंगे वो होता है land ceiling. Land ceiling क्यों effective था? This was asked. Then the next block is farm subsidies and MSP, PDS, buffer stocks, food security. Food security पे हम दो question ऊपर भी देख चुके हैं. आगे देखते हैं. What are the different types of agricultural subsidies given to farmers at the national and state levels? Analyze the agricultural subsidy regime with reference to distortions that are created by it. Now, one of this type of subsidy is also the MSP and how it creates distortions. So this I have to read. Then, food security bill is expected to eliminate hunger and malnutrition. Discuss various apprehensions in its effective implementation along with the concerns it has generated in the World Trade Organization. ऊपर भी क्वेश्चन था फूड सिक्योरिटी पे, यहां पर भी सेम क्वेश्चन है. वहां पर नेशनल फूड सिक्योरिटी एक्ट पे था, यहां फूड सिक्योरिटी बिल पे है. एंड द क्वेश्चन इज नाउ ऑन हाउ इट विल एलिमिनेट हंगर एंड व्हाट चैलेंजेस इट हैज विद रिगार्ड्स टू WTO. ओके, इन द विलेजेस itself, no form of credit organization will be suitable except the cooperative society. This was said by All India Rural Credit Survey. Discuss this statement in the background of agricultural finance. What constraints and challenges do financial institutions face in supplying agricultural finances? How can technology be used to better reach and serve rural clients? So technology being used for agricultural finance has been asked, and cooperatives in the economy has been asked. Then, in what way could replacement of pride subsidy with DBT change the scenario of subsidies in India? So again, subsidies was a topic. ऊपर भी पूछा था, यहां पूछा कि DBT से अगर मैं subsidies दे दूं, how it would be better. Then again a question on subsidies. How do subsidies affect cropping pattern, crop diversity, and economy of farmers? Significance of crop insurance, MSP, and food processing for small and marginal farmers. Again, you see how two topics have been linked. Subsidies linked to cropping pattern and crop diversification, both we have seen above. Significance of crop insurance, MSP, and food processing. These are also things we have seen above. Then, what do you mean by MSP? How will MSP rescue farmers from low income trap? So direct question on MSP, और इस बार भी आएगा, देख लेना. Then, reformative steps taken by the government to make food grain distribution system more effective. तो issues of distribution मेरे syllabus में था, वहीं से पूछा है कि government ने क्या steps लिए हैं जिससे this has become more effective. PDS भी मेरे syllabus में था. So major challenges of PDS, how can it be made effective and transparent? Direct and indirect, this is 2023 question. Again, direct and indirect subsidies provided to farm sector. Repeated है. Discuss the issues raised by WTO in relation to agricultural subsidies. ये भी repeated है. So if you were giving the mains in 2023 and you had done all the previous year questions, this would not have been a problem, right? Now, अभी तक मुझे क्या समझ आया है? अभी तक मुझे ये समझ आया है that one, questions are fairly direct. Second, there is a huge repeat value. Third, topics are linked to one another within the agriculture syllabus. For example, we saw technology being linked to crop diversification. So now when I have to study agriculture, what should I do? क्या ये चीजें मुझे समझ आ गई, मैंने प्रीवियस ईयर क्वेश्चंस देख लिए, मुझे सिलेबस देख लिया. Now after I have understood this, that these three things are happening, what in your opinion should be my approach when I am covering agriculture? So अब अगर मुझे agriculture करना है, आई एम टीचिंग यू दिस सो दैट ऑब्वियसली मैं आपको पूरा एग्रीकल्चर पढ़ाऊंगा एंड विल कवर एवरी सिंगल प्रीवियस ईयर क्वेश्चन, बट फॉर अदर सब्जेक्ट्स ऑल्सो यू नीड टू नो हाउ स्टडिंग इज सपोज टू बी डन. तो अब आप मुझे बताओ कि अगर मुझे ये समझ आ गया, what should now be my approach in agriculture? What are the things I need to keep in mind? What did you understand? Good. If questions are direct and repeated, तो मुझे थीम वाइज सारे PYQs लिख लेने चाहिए और एटलीस्ट ये मुझे कवर कर लेना चाहिए. Then I understood that occasionally, at least, there were some questions from current affairs, and ये current affairs का best source होता है इकोनॉमी में इकोनॉमिक सर्वे. तो किसी चीज जिसपे इकोनॉमिक सर्वे ने काफी फोकस किया है वो मुझे पढ़ लेना चाहिए और करंट अफेयर्स पढ़ लेने चाहिए. जैसे इस बार का अगर आप इकोनॉमिक सर्वे देखोगे तो उसमें जो एग्रीकल्चर का चैप्टर है, चैप्टर 9, उसमें स्पेसिफिकली कोऑपरेटिव सोसाइटीज पे काफी फोकस है. एंड आई ऑल्सो सॉ दैट कोऑपरेटिव सोसाइटीज पे क्वेश्चन आ चुका है, सो इट इज लाइकली. सेकंड थिंग आई सॉ कि करंट अफेयर्स में इन दिसंबर जनवरी देयर वाज अ प्रोटेस्ट फॉर लीगलाइजेशन ऑफ मिनिमम सपोर्ट प्राइस. तो ऑब्वियसली एमएसपी पे प्रीवियस ईयर क्वेश्चंस भी थे, इकोनॉमिक सर्वे में भी एमएसपी पे 3-4 पैराग्राफ दिए हुए हैं और प्रोटेस्ट भी हुई थी. एंड द इश्यू ऑफ एमएसपी इज वेरी क्लोजली लिंक्ड टू द आइडिया ऑफ क्रॉप डाइवर्सिफिकेशन आल्सो, सो दिस टॉपिक बिकम्स इंपॉर्टेंट. तो जीएस3 को जो हम सोचते हैं कि ये करंट अफेयर्स बेस्ड है, इसमें बस हम कोई मेंस 365 या इस टाइप का डॉक्यूमेंट पढ़ लें, दिस इज नॉट व्हाट वी आर सपोज्ड टू डू. We are supposed to read all the themes and cover all the PYQs, and then just maybe a little bit addition from current affairs will help. ठीक है. Now I hope आपको समझ आ गया है basically that this subject of agriculture revolves around previous year questions. Questions are direct, but you have to write better answers than others, right? And for that you need to go and read it in detail. Okay. Now, अब आज जो टॉपिक हम पढ़ने वाले हैं वो है लैंड रिफॉर्म्स, बट यहां पर एक चीज मिस हो गई, आई थिंक this thing, that the topics that usually are asked are linked. If the topics are linked, I should have at least one generic thinking pattern for agriculture and I should be prepared for a broad question. तो agriculture in India का मेरे पास एक broad mental framework होना चाहिए. इस broad mental framework में I can fit everything and I should constantly keep referring to it. अगर मैं constantly इस framework को refer करता रहूंगा तो मुझे याद रहेगा मैं कहां पे क्या पढ़ रहा हूं and how these two things are linked together. Correct? All right. So, first thing that we are going to study is this thinking pattern for agriculture. A broad thinking pattern. ठीक है. देखो यार, if agriculture has to happen, and this will probably also clear up for you what agriculture means. हमारी conception of agriculture है कि farmer going to the field, cutting crops, harvesting them. This is obviously agriculture, but agriculture is much beyond this. तो हमें एक thinking pattern establish करना है. तो agriculture में there are basically 3 steps. सबसे पहले input होगा, इनपुट के बाद प्रोडक्शन होगा, एंड देयर मस्ट बी सम पोस्ट प्रोडक्शन थिंग्स. ठीक है. ऑब्वियसली इट इज गोइंग टू हैपन लाइक दिस. अब आप मुझे बताओ, अब देखते हैं चैट में कौन क्या लिखता है, बिकॉज अभी तक तो आप लोग मजे ले रहे हो. इनपुट में टेल मी व्हाट आर द फैक्टर्स दैट आर इन्वॉल्व्ड इन एग्रीकल्चरल इनपुट. व्हाट ऑल कैन आई राइट हियर. आपने प्रीवियस ईयर क्वेश्चंस देख लिए, आपने सिलेबस देख लिया. अगर मेरे को एग्रीकल्चर के इनपुट के बारे में सोचना है, व्हाट ऑल इज इंक्लूडेड इन एग्रीकल्चरल इनपुट, टेल मी. सीड्स, वेरी गुड. आप जो जो लिखते जाओगे मैं आई विल कीप राइटिंग ऑन द बोर्ड. seeds. I also saw someone writing land. What else? One second. ठीक है, labor, the farmer himself, fertilizer, pesticides also, let's write here only. और बताओ क्या क्या है यहाँ पर? Water, very good. Financial help मतलब कैपिटल. हमने जब क्वेश्चन अभी पढ़ा कि एग्रीकल्चरल फाइनेंस इज एन इशू, कोऑपरेटिव्स के रिलेटेड क्वेश्चन था एग्रीकल्चरल फाइनेंस को, तो कैपिटल इज आल्सो समथिंग आई हैव टू राइट. व्हाट एल्स? नॉलेज, वेरी गुड. सो एक्सटेंशन सर्विसेज लाइक रिसर्च एंड डेवलपमेंट. व्हाट एल्स? टेक्नोलॉजी आई विल पुट इन R&D. टेक्नोलॉजी वो मैंने वहीं रख लिया. Just missing one last thing. Machines, okay, good. Machinery. So mechanization and machinery in agriculture. और बताओ. Manure आ गया ना fertilizer pesticide में. Energy ठीक है, I'll write energy specifically, although वो water में cover हो जाएगा, but हम लिख लेते हैं energy. Put yourself in the shoes of a farmer and think कि अगर आपको चलाना होता, और इस पे प्रीवियस ईयर क्वेश्चन भी था. आई एम गिविंग यू द हिंट. वन इनपुट इज मिसिंग, वन मेजर इनपुट इज मिसिंग. गुड उत्कर्ष. इंश्योरेंस. प्रधानमंत्री फसल बीमा योजना पे क्वेश्चन था ना, तो यू वुड आल्सो नीड इंश्योरेंस. सो इफ आई हैव टू थिंक अबाउट इनपुट इन एग्रीकल्चर, इट विल इंक्लूड सीड्स, लैंड, लेबर, फर्टिलाइजर्स, पेस्टिसाइड्स, वाटर, मशीनरी, रिसर्च, एनर्जी, कैपिटल एंड इंश्योरेंस. इससे मेरा इनपुट होगा. अब एग्रीकल्चर में प्रोडक्शन क्या क्या हो रही है, व्हाट इज द पॉसिबल प्रोडक्शन दैट इज हैपनिंग. कैपिटल में आ जाएगा एयर सब्सिडी. व्हाट इज द पॉसिबल प्रोडक्शन दैट इज हैपनिंग इन द एग्रीकल्चरल सेक्टर, वो आप मुझे बताओ. इनपुट में नहीं चाहिए होंगी ना यार स्टोरेज फैसिलिटीज, पोस्ट प्रोडक्शन में चाहिए होंगी स्टोरेज फैसिलिटीज. अभी तो मैंने इनपुट किया है, मैंने फार्म पे, मैंने ये सब मेरे पास है, ये सब मैं फार्म पर लेकर गया और मैंने प्रोड्यूस करना स्टार्ट किया. व्हाट ऑल एम आई प्रोड्यूसिंग? somebody is writing wine. यार थोड़ा तो सीरियस हो जाओ. ठीक है. I can say I am producing certain crops like cereals, millets, pulses, oil seeds, etc. ठीक है, ये फूड क्रॉप्स हो गए. what else I am producing? ठीक है, I am producing certain cash crops. प्लांटेशन हो सकती है, जैसे कि बैम्बू प्लांटेशन, टी, कॉफी, एक्सेट्रा. व्हाट एल्स एम आई प्रोड्यूसिंग? गुड. आई कैन हैव इवन फिशरीज हियर. व्हाट एल्स एम आई प्रोड्यूसिंग? लाइवस्टॉक, वेरी गुड. सो इवन लाइवस्टॉक कल्टिवेशन कैन बी हियर. व्हाट एल्स? हॉर्टिकल्चर. Horticulture is also something I'm doing. यहाँ पर fruits, vegetables. This is also a specific dimension I need to read. What else? Dairy farming आ जाएगा ना यार इसमें, लाइवस्टॉक में आ जाएगा, एनिमल हस्बेंड्री भी आ जाएगा, फ्लोरिकल्चर हॉर्टिकल्चर में आ जाएगा, लाइवस्टॉक में सेरिकल्चर भी आ जाएगा. एग्रो फॉरेस्ट्री सुना है आप लोगों ने? सो इवन द आइडिया ऑफ collection of minor forest produce and agroforestry is something I need to write here. ठीक है. अब इसमें आगे डिविजन होंगे. क्रॉप्स बहुत तरह के हो सकते हैं, कैश क्रॉप्स तरह के हो सकते हैं, फिशरीज कैन बी इनलैंड फिशरीज और मरीन एक्वाकल्चर फिशरीज. देयर कैन बी livestock of various kind. There can be beekeeping also, sericulture also. There can be horticulture in terms of fruit, vegetables etc. Floriculture भी हो सकता है, where flowers are being grown. Then there can be agroforestry and use of forest produce in agriculture. ठीक है. Now नहीं, अभी हम बस ये देख रहे हैं कि क्या क्या प्रोडक्शन है. अब प्रोडक्शन में एक चीज हमने जो यहां मिस कर दी, इज ऑल्सो जीरो बजट नेचुरल फार्मिंग और ऑर्गेनिक फार्मिंग. ठीक है, तो ये आइडिया भी है. अब नेक्स्ट थिंग इज पोस्ट प्रोडक्शन. मैंने ये इनपुट्स लिए, मैंने अपने फील्ड पे डाले, एंड आई एम एबल टू प्रोड्यूस मे बी सम वेरिएशन ऑफ ऑल ऑफ दिस. नाउ व्हाट आर द स्टेप्स रिक्वायर्ड फॉर पोस्ट प्रोडक्शन मैनेजमेंट ऑफ एग्रीकल्चर? बायोएथेनॉल फार्म पे नहीं प्रोड्यूस हो रहा ना यार, बायोएथेनॉल पोस्ट प्रोडक्शन में देखेंगे. फार्म पर तो नहीं होता बायोएथेनॉल प्रोड्यूस, शुगर केन प्रोड्यूस होता है फार्म पे. पोस्ट प्रोडक्शन में क्या करना है? बायोएथेनॉल यहां आएगा. टेल मी व्हाट इज रिक्वायर्ड पोस्ट प्रोडक्शन. ठीक है, तो पोस्ट प्रोडक्शन का ना एक लाइफ साइकिल बना लेते हैं. पोस्ट प्रोडक्शन, अब बायोएथेनॉल अगर यहां पर है तो यू ऑब्वियसली नीड टू राइट अबाउट थिंग्स लाइक वैल्यू एडिशन टू क्रॉप्स. ठीक है, सब्सिडी पोस्ट प्रोडक्शन नहीं होगी ना. सबसे को आपने प्रोड्यूस किया, फार्म गेट पे आपके पास क्रॉप आ गया, फार्म में आपने प्रोड्यूस कर दिया. अब यहां से आप क्या करोगे? यू विल ट्रांसपोर्ट इट समवेयर. तो एग्रीकल्चरल ट्रांसपोर्ट इज समथिंग वी हैव टू रीड, और इस पे क्वेश्चंस भी थे. ट्रांसपोर्ट करके यू विल आइडियली वांट कि आपको स्टोरेज की जगह मिल जाए ताकि आपको डिस्ट्रेस सेल ना करनी पड़े. तो स्टोरेज की भी जगह होगी. अब आपने ट्रांसपोर्ट करके स्टोर कर लिया, या फार्म पर भी कहीं पे थोड़ा बहुत स्टोर किया. उसके बाद आप क्या करोगे? यू विल वांट टू मार्केट इट. You have to take it to the market. So what all markets are accessible to you? One is domestic market. आपने domestic market में sell कर दिया. तो domestic market में अगर आपने sell किया तो you will have to read about APMCs. You can also sell to the government. If you are selling to the government, you have to read about public procurement, PDS, food stocks, etc. मार्केटिंग में आपने और क्या किया? आपने गवर्नमेंट को सेल करने के अलावा या डोमेस्टिक मार्केट के अलावा यू कैन ऑल्सो एक्सपोर्ट इट. तो जब आप एक्सपोर्ट पढ़ोगे तो यू विल रीड अबाउट सैनिटरी एंड फाइटोसैनिटरी मेजर्स. यू विल रीड अबाउट एक्सपोर्ट में चैलेंजेस ऑफ WTO, जिसपे क्वेश्चन भी आ चुका है 2-3 बार. ठीक है, व्हाट एल्स? और क्या क्या है यहाँ पे? जो आपने प्रोड्यूस किया था वो सिर्फ क्रॉप्स तो नहीं है, यू हैव प्रोड्यूस अदर थिंग्स ऑल्सो. सो यू हैव प्रोड्यूस सम वेस्ट. Now this waste can also be value added later, and it is also not necessary that direct from storage you will go to marketing. Maybe between this process at some point you want to say that no, I want to go for food processing, so I don't want to sell potatoes, I want to sell potato chips. I don't want to sell apples, I want to sell jams, right? So food processing and value addition is also something that you will do, right? Now when you are producing and marketing, let's say through food processing or without food processing, something else will happen. The things that will happen, one is that you will get certain income. So your farm income is also something I have to study here. And ये चीज obviously first two पे dependent होगी. आपने देखा बहुत questions भी थे farm income पे. So this is also something that is dependent on the previous two things that we have read in input and production, and dependent on this factor also. तो जब income पे question आएगा, for example, think about everything, not just this. Okay? अब यहां पर अगर income हो रही है हमें, तो हम यहां पर in this process also there will be something like farm subsidies, although that will be at every stage. But subsidies, for example, most importantly the form of MSP or the subsidies given for transport storage, there are also fertilizer subsidies etc. तो subsidies भी यहां पर हैं. Again, अब मुझे अगर subsidies के बारे में सोचना है, I have to think about the entire value chain, not just here, है ना? और यहां पर क्या होगा? जो these things that I'm writing at the bottom here, these are for the entire value chain. Okay, this entire system of agriculture, right from input to final production and marketing and income realization will have certain involvement of technology. इसको मैं अलग से यहाँ, sorry about this, इसको मैं अलग से यहाँ लिख देता हूँ. Certain technology will be there, that will be there across this system. Again, अब मुझे अगर एग्रीकल्चर टेक्नोलॉजी पे क्वेश्चन आ जाए, आई शुड थिंक अक्रॉस द बोर्ड, है ना. अच्छा, आगे देखते हैं. टेक्नोलॉजी के अलावा क्या है जो पूरे सिस्टम पे इंपैक्ट कर रहा है? देयर शुड बी सम एग्रीकल्चरल पॉलिसी दैट आई हैव, राइट. सो एग्रीकल्चर पॉलिसी विल बी अगेन टॉकिंग अबाउट द एंटायर सिस्टम, नॉट जस्ट टॉकिंग अबाउट वन पार्ट. करेक्ट? इतना समझ आया? अब throughout the system of agriculture there is also another thing, which is ensuring that agriculture is climate smart. Ensuring that agriculture throughout our entire system is not vulnerable to the idea of climate change. तो अब मुझे आज के बाद एग्रीकल्चर पे कोई भी ब्रॉड क्वेश्चन आ जाए, ठीक है, मान लो मुझे क्वेश्चन आ जाए ऑन हाउ टू इंप्रूव, चलो हम ट्राई करते हैं, ठीक है, लेट्स ट्राई एंड राइट और ब्रेनस्टॉर्म अ क्वेश्चन लाइव. ठीक है, क्वेश्चन मैं बोर्ड पे लिखता हूं और फिर आप सोचो. एक्चुअली आई लेट यू थिंक नाउ फॉर 2-3 मिनट्स एंड देन आई विल शो यू हाउ आई वुड हैव थॉट. ओके, ये क्वेश्चन आज तक आया नहीं है, बट सिमिलर क्वेश्चंस हैव कम. मान लो यू गेट अ क्वेश्चन टू दिस ट्यून, हाउ कैन वी डबल फार्मर्स इनकम. फार्मर इनकम को डबल कैसे किया जा सकता है? देयर वाज ऑब्वियसली अशोक दलवाई कमिटी मेड इन 2016 फॉर दिस एग्जैक्ट पर्पस, एंड हम उसकी सारी रिकमेंडेशंस डिटेल में पढ़ेंगे. यू डोंट नीड टू वरी अबाउट इट. बट let's say you get a question to this accord, how can we double farmers income? You have 3 minutes. I will not show you the supply chain that we have made. Try and brainstorm कि इस क्वेश्चन में आप क्या क्या लिख सकते थे. I'm assuming that if you get a question like this now, you should easily be able to write 15 to 20 points. And I'm able to see that in your chat also. अगर आपने सप्लाई चेन को पूरी तरह ढंग से समझा है, so you will be able to write a lot of points. तो अब इस आंसर को लिखने की ट्राई करते हैं, ठीक है? Let's go one by one, ठीक है? Now, seeds में मैं क्या better कर सकता हूँ? I can have high yielding variety of seeds. I can have genetic enhancements in seeds, है ना? लैंड और वाटर में मैं क्या बेटर कर सकता हूं? लैंड में आई कैन डू बेटर रिसोर्स मैनेजमेंट ऑफ लैंड, फॉर एग्जाम्पल कंसोलिडेशन ऑफ लैंड होल्डिंग्स, डिजिटाइजेशन ऑफ लैंड रिकॉर्ड्स, फॉर एग्जाम्पल द आइडिया ऑफ having specific ideas for people who have fragmented land holdings or small or marginal land holdings. Okay, water also here I've already read previous year questions, so I can adopt micro irrigation. I can do better resource management here. In terms of fertilizers and pesticides, what can I do? One idea is that I can ensure organic fertilizers and pesticides. Second is I can rationalize the use of fertilizers. अभी क्या होता है, ओवर यूज होता है फर्टिलाइजर का. आपने सॉइल हेल्थ कार्ड स्कीम के बारे में पढ़ा होगा, है ना? ओके. Then machinery can be made better available in the form of custom hiring centers. Then labor तो चलो farmer खुद ही है, but I can replace the labor intensive processes with mechanization. Then I can focus on agricultural extension services. I can provide better energy, climate smart energy solutions. I can also think about schemes like PM Kusum, where solar energy is being used on the farm itself, that generates energy for the farmer and also generates income for the farmer. Then in terms of capital, I can do better financing. I can have better agricultural credit. I can think about cooperatives. I can think about crop insurance. In case अगर कोई crop loss हो जाता है, तो insurance needs to be better. Then in terms of production, I can firstly focus on organic farming and zero budget natural farming. इससे क्या होगा? Our export potential will become better, better price realization will happen. Then I can think about, in terms of crops, I can think about more productive crops. And how will I have more productive crops? If I grow for crop diversification. So I can shift to crops that are more productive. Then I can focus on these allied sectors like fisheries, livestock, better livestock management. I can think about integrated farming system, जिस पे question भी आया था 2-3 बार. Then I can shift farmers towards horticulture because it will lead to better realization of agricultural income. I can improve agroforestry services. This will also lead to better income. आगे देखते हैं. Post production में मैं क्या करूं? I can have better transport and logistics. इस पे भी काफी बात हुई है इस बार इकोनॉमिक सर्वे में. Then I can focus on storage. Storage में I can develop cold chain, warehousing, etc. Then I can enhance the food processing potential, the waste to wealth potential, and focus on value addition in agriculture, right? This will also double farmers' income. Then in terms of marketing, I can focus on reforms in APMCs in the domestic market, better public procurement, and better rationalized MSP policy. In terms of exports, I can fight to remove the sanitary and phytosanitary impediments to my export, to ensure that WTO does not create hindrances to the export that our farmers are doing. There is no limit to the amount of points I can write if I get a broad question on agriculture. इसीलिए मैं आपको कह रहा हूं, for whatever we read from now on, have this in your mind. Okay? अब इनकम हमने देख लिया. सेम चीज ही अगर सब्सिडीज पे आती तो आई वुड हैव रिटन दैट आई नीड टू रैशनलाइज सब्सिडीज इन ऑल माय इनपुट्स एंड शिफ्ट सब्सिडीज प्रोबेबली हियर और प्रोबेबली हियर, राइट? सिमिलरली टेक को अगर मेरे पे क्वेश्चन आ जाए, हाउ कैन ई टेक्नोलॉजी हेल्प फार्मर्स, इफ दिस ब्रॉड क्वेश्चन कम्स, और जैसे क्वेश्चन आया था हाउ कैन बायोटेक्नोलॉजी हेल्प फार्मर्स, तो बायोटेक्नोलॉजी में पीपल आर रिस्ट्रिक्टेड टू दिस हाई यील्डिंग वैरायटी एंड जेनेटिक एनहांसमेंट ऑफ सीड्स. बट देर आर सो मेनी अदर थिंग्स ना. अगर आपके पास ये सारी चीजें याद हैं तो योर पॉइंट्स एंड आंसर्स विल ऑटोमेटिकली बी मोर मल्टी डायमेंशनल. देन if I talk about agricultural policy, I can talk of all these issues. Similarly, if I have to speak of climate smart agriculture, I have to focus on all dimensions. Okay, so agriculture में आज के बाद, if there is any question that we are writing, we will focus on the entire value chain of agriculture, not just the idea of input or production or post production, but all three. यहां तक बात समझ आई? अब ये क्लियर है? आगे देखते हैं. नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन आई वांट टू आस्क यू इज, एंड ये भी आपने मुझे बताना है, दैट व्हाट इज द सिग्निफिकेंस of the agriculture sector in India. Agriculture sector in India employs a lot of people, है ना? It contributes about 18% to the GDP. But what is the significance of the agriculture sector? Don't only think from an economic perspective. Think from a broad multidimensional perspective. ठीक है? बताओ. Broad question है. Significance of agriculture sector. Again, you have 3 minutes. Think. Agriculture हम पूरा ऐसे ही पढ़ेंगे. You will think and I will think together. Then we'll come to answers. एक ऑर्डर में सोचते हैं. What is the political significance of agriculture? The social significance of agriculture, economic significance of agriculture, technological significance of agriculture, environmental significance of agriculture. Feminization good, regionalism issues good. Even अगर आपको अच्छे से याद हो, you can relate it to the Naxalism issue. Of course, if you are giving means this year, please, I'm assuming you are watching this recorded, please skip this part. ये जो timers वगैरह हैं, ये this is not for you. ठीक है, आपने मोस्ट ऑफ द पॉइंट्स लिख ही दिए हैं, सो आई विल स्टॉप दिस टाइमर. बट एक बहुत मेजर चीज यहाँ पर मिसिंग थी, तो वो मैं आपको भी बताऊंगा, बट वील फर्स्ट टॉक अबाउट व्हाट द बेसिक पॉइंट्स आर. राइट, सबसे पहले अगर मैं पॉलिटिकल सिग्निफिकेंस देखूं एग्रीकल्चर की, राइट, सो पॉलिटिकल सिग्निफिकेंस ऑब्वियसली इज नॉट ओनली इन टर्म्स ऑफ, आप यू a lot of you wrote about the Naxalism issue. Of course there is the Naxalism issue. So अगर मैं political significance की बात करूं, तो there are the issues of regionalism. The idea of Naxalism also is emerging from a failure of land reforms and unsustainable agriculture. But agriculture politically is also considered to be a huge vote bank, right? And we have seen this when the farm laws were not had to be repealed. So the idea of political linkages to agriculture you should also write. For example, the idea of loan waivers, the idea of subsidy politics. है ना इंडिया में सब्सिडी पॉलिटिक्स यार? That this idea of providing everything free or for giving more than remunerative prices, for example, for sugarcane, is done because there is subsidy politics. So this is the political significance of the agriculture sector. If the agriculture sector is in distress, it becomes a threat to India's political stability because of protests. Okay, this is the political significance of the agriculture sector. Now let us talk of the social significance of agriculture sector. हमें क्या पता है 18% population is here, sorry 18% of GDP it is contributing, and 43% of population is here, approximately ये data है. What does this tell us? If 43% of the population is only contributing 18% of the GDP, there are issues of poverty. There are also issues of lack of equity. So the idea of inclusive growth also stems from agriculture. This also means that there are issues of disguised unemployment. Then the agriculture sector, if this is written in this year's economic survey, अब आप social जब सोचते हो, don't only think of only the social things you need, think about SDGs. इस साल के इकोनॉमिक सर्वे में जो कल आया है उसमें ये लिखा है that agriculture sector is directly responsible for implementing 11 out of the 17 SDGs. अब अगर आप सोचने लगोगे no poverty, no hunger, good health, women empowerment, ये सारी चीजें इसमें आएंगी. Maybe not quality education, which is SDG 4, but 11 SDGs out of 17 are part that can be implemented through the agriculture sector. So if you get a question on this, you have to mention these, और यहां से आपको 11 पॉइंट्स मिल जाएंगे. राइट, ठीक है, आगे देखते हैं. अब अगर मुझे एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर की इकोनॉमिक सिग्निफिकेंस देखनी है, नाउ दिस इज इंटरेस्टिंग एंड आई वांट टू एक्सप्लेन दिस इन डिटेल. देखो, लेट अस कंपेयर द आइडिया ऑफ व्हाट हैपेंड इन एग्रीकल्चर इन चाइना एंड व्हाट हैपेंड इन एग्रीकल्चर, और रादर द मेजर स्ट्रक्चरल आइडिया ऑफ द इकोनॉमी इन चाइना एंड इंडिया. ये कंपेयर करते हैं. चाइना में भी एग्रीकल्चर रिफॉर्म्स हुए हैं, बट चाइना में जो एग्रीकल्चर रिफॉर्म्स हुए हैं वो हैं बॉटम अप रिफॉर्म्स. So what they did was they first focused on agricultural reforms. So their economic reforms started from agriculture. So they increased the investment in agriculture. Okay. They tried to increase farm incomes. How they did this is questionable. Great leap forward was a very bad step. But they focused on export, even when their own population was starving. अब हुआ क्या इससे, ठीक है, या चलो we'll read the impact together. इंडिया में जो एग्रीकल्चरल रिफॉर्म्स हुए हैं या इकोनॉमिक रिफॉर्म्स हुए हैं वो टॉप डाउन है. Their impact is mostly on other sectors. So it is mainly the services sector that has led to agricultural transformation in India. और सॉरी, इकोनॉमिक ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन इन इंडिया. सर्विसेज सेक्टर हमें एम्प्लॉयमेंट जनरेट कर रहा है. सर्विसेज सेक्टर अबाउट 50% ऑफ जीडीपी कंट्रीब्यूट कर रहा है. तो इट इज बिन ऑन द सर्विसेज सेक्टर. अब यहां पर हम एक प्रॉब्लम देखते हैं. हमारी इकोनॉमी में देयर इज अ पर्टिकुलर प्रॉब्लम ऑफ मैन्युफैक्चरिंग ग्रोथ नॉट हैपनिंग. आई एम श्योर यू नो अबाउट दिस, दैट हम हमेशा ही कहते हैं यार कि मैन्युफैक्चरिंग सेक्टर इज नॉट ग्रोइंग, राइट, बट चाइना में ये प्रॉब्लम नहीं है, राइट. So let's try and understand why. Because of these two reasons only, just from here we will understand why the Chinese manufacturing sector does better and Indian manufacturing sector is not doing that much better. This is one of the reasons. It's obviously there are many other reasons. अगर हम चाइना में देखें क्या हुआ है, तो चाइना में agricultural incomes were high. After these reforms, the agri income became high. When agricultural income becomes high, that means rural incomes are high. When rural incomes are high, it led to a demand of manufactured products. So when a Chinese villager wanted to brush his teeth, they were not looking for datun, they were looking for toothbrush and toothpaste. So low level manufacturing goods were first demanded in the rural areas because the reforms were started at the bottom level in the agricultural sector, leading to high farm incomes, right? तो जब farm incomes high होती हैं, firstly the agriculture sector promotes industrialization and manufacturing. How? Other than manufacturing, I should write industrialization here. It promotes industrialization, one, by creating a demand for it. The other thing it does is that if you are able to export, it means you have a certain surplus. This agrarian surplus, अब भाई ये हम अगर एग्रीकल्चर को सिर्फ सोचेंगे इन टर्म्स ऑफ व्हीट एंड राइस तो अलग बात है, बट इफ यू लुक एट द surplus that agriculture is generating, it is also generating rubber, it is also generating tobacco, it is also generating bamboo, coffee, tea. So this agricultural surplus becomes input for this industry. तो चाइना में जो इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन हुई है, and this is directly out of Uma Kapila ma'am's book, the Chinese industrialization has been largely sponsored by bottom-up agrarian reforms. So the agricultural income was high, so there was a demand of manufactured products, and the agrarian surplus was giving input to industrialization. So the structural transformation of the economy. What is structural transformation of economy? Structural transformation of economy is that first any economy in the world will be an agricultural economy. From this you move to an industrialization based, manufacturing based economy, and lastly you move to a services based economy. Now China has followed these steps, and this is largely in terms of your population growth also. अगर हम एक country की population growth generally देखें तो शुरू में the population is low, not good, and anyway the number of births happening are less. Then what happens? Healthcare situation improves, health becomes better, so number of deaths decline, so population starts rising. Then once agriculture is enough, agriculture is sustainable, and it becomes something that can feed the entire population, births start growing even further, right? Because birth control has not come yet. Then later, at this time when population has become high, at this time you need that population needs to shift from this sector to this sector to get economic remuneration. Then when population shifts from agricultural to industrial sector, you get economic remuneration. Women also get employment in the manufacturing sector. Contraceptives and the idea of birth control comes, and then the population stabilizes here. At this time you need to have a services based economy, because you don't have that much population, but in the services industry one person can feed many. For example, I am in the services industry and I am teaching all of you right now, right? So this, if you even relate to the population growth of a country, happens in this manner. Okay. Now India mein problem kya hui, and this is largely what has happened in China. They've collapsed now because of faulty population policies, but this is largely their transformation because their agrarian reforms were good and they were able to generate marketable surplus of agriculture. India mein kya hua hai? India में जो reforms हुए हैं, they have started from the services sector. So because they have started from the services sector, the problem is that reform यहाँ हुए directly, and we directly shifted from agriculture to this. Now services की जो capacity है to generate GDP वो बहुत high है. That is why you see that India has very high GDP growth. But services की जो capacity है, जैसे मैं आपको बता रहा था, to actually, gain or meaningfully employ people, the absorption capacity in terms of human resources of services industry is very low, right? तो हमने एग्रीकल्चर से हमारी मूवमेंट तो सर्विसेज में हुई, बट बहुत ही कम लोग थे जो सर्विसेज सेक्टर में आ पाए, because these number of people who were coming to the services sector and the sector that was actually generating about 50% of the GDP, these people are low. What will it lead to? It will lead to certain elite classes. So it led to a lack of inclusive growth. Because for inclusive growth, you need this sector. This sector has a high GDP generating capacity. It also has a high absorption capacity. अब कुछ ही लोग हैं जिनके पास इनकम ज्यादा है, राइट? तो इस सेक्टर में क्या प्रॉब्लम आएगी? व्हाट विल बी द प्रॉब्लम इन द इंडस्ट्रियल मैन्युफैक्चरिंग सेक्टर? द मैन्युफैक्चरिंग सेक्टर विल वन फेस द प्रॉब्लम ऑफ लो डिमांड, बिकॉज जो डिमांड है ऑफ फिनिश्ड गुड्स, ऑफ इंडस्ट्रियल गुड्स, वो सिर्फ यहां से मिलेगी. सेकेंड, बिकॉज देयर इज लैक ऑफ एग्रेरियन रिफॉर्म्स, तो सरप्लस नहीं है. तो अगर सरप्लस नहीं है, देन इट विल ऑल्सो फेस अ प्रॉब्लम ऑफ इनपुट्स, राइट? तो अगर आपका रिफॉर्म यहां से शुरू हुआ है, तो आपका आइडिया क्या है कि सर्विसेज सेक्टर में लोग आएंगे, दे विल क्रिएट सम डिमांड फॉर मैन्युफैक्चरिंग, बिकॉज मैन्युफैक्चरिंग डिमांड विल देन राइज, then more demand will be there for production of finished goods, then people from agriculture will be pulled to manufacturing, right? तो इंडिया में हो क्या रहा है कि सर्विसेज में there is high GDP, low population. Because low population, the demand for finished products from manufacturing sector is coming from this low population only. Then ठीक है, चलो the population will धीरे धीरे it will increase here, it will create demand for the manufacturing sector. Once demand for manufacturing sector comes, this sector becomes established and it actually gives better incomes, and it will also create demand for itself. For example, a factory worker will also use the products he is producing himself. Then finally it will trickle down to the agricultural sector कि अब ये एस्टैब्लिश हो गया है, अब एग्रीकल्चर छोड़ के लोग यहां आ सकते हैं, राइट? So, and this is a keyword that's also given in your notes and I want you to write in your answers, the transformation of the economy or structural transformation of the economy or agrarian reforms in India have been held hostage to the trickle down effect. Why? Because of lack of bottom up agrarian reforms as seen in China, right? अब अगर ये होगा तो what is the other thing that is happening? बिकॉज इस सेक्टर में जीडीपी प्रोड्यूस करने की तो बहुत कैपेबिलिटी है, बट इट कैन नॉट अब्सॉर्ब द पॉपुलेशन. पॉपुलेशन अब्सॉर्प्शन के लिए ये सेक्टर है, बट इट इज ओनली hostage to the trickle down effect. This is the problem. Okay, and this is why the Indian agriculture sector is very significant. Okay, this is its economic significance. Now, अगर हम एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर की सिग्निफिकेंस देखें इकोनॉमी में, वी हैव सीन द सिग्निफिकेंस विद रिगार्ड्स टू स्ट्रक्चरल ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन. Obviously there will be a significance with regards to rural incomes. Even the technology demand, कौन से फार्मर्स टेक्नोलॉजी डिमांड करेंगे? ओनली फार्मर्स दैट हैव इनफ सरप्लस टू इन्वेस्ट इन दैट टेक्नोलॉजी. सो टेक्नोलॉजिकल डिमांड विल आल्सो कम if the agrarian sector is in good health. Okay, so there is also a technological significance here. For example, if there are farmers that are rich, only those farmers will want micro irrigation or will be able to afford micro irrigation. They are the farmers that will want mechanized agriculture. They are the farmers that will look for things like planes or drones for spraying of pesticides. Then if farmers are rich, another economic significance is labor management. They will be able to give further jobs for people to work on their farms. Okay, now any other significance for agriculture that you can think of other than this? दो dimensions अभी काफी major dimensions रहती हैं. इसके अलावा कोई दो और major dimensions significance of agriculture में? लीगल सिक्योरिटी तो हमने कर लिया पॉलिटी में. एनवायरमेंट, गुड. अब अगर मुझे एनवायरमेंटल सिग्निफिकेंस ऑफ एग्रीकल्चर सोचनी है तो आई कैन अगेन गो बैक टू द सप्लाई चेन ऑफ एग्रीकल्चर दैट आई नो. एनवायरमेंटल सिग्निफिकेंस ऑफ एग्रीकल्चर will include land degradation, soil degradation, overuse of fertilizers. It will include the impact because of high yielding variety and genetic modification. It will include the impact of over fertilizer use, things like eutrophication. It will include the impact of water stress. Correct? Then it has to be climate smart agriculture. I can think in terms of organic farming, in terms of zero budget natural farming, right? I can think again, when I come here, I can think of even in these areas, I can think of the pesticides that are being used, and finally they are going to food processing and we are eating them. So I can think of bioaccumulation and biomagnification. So environmentally, it also has a huge significance. What is the other dimension for significance of the agriculture sector that I have missed here? एक और dimension है, environment में water management वगैरह तो आएगा. What else? Crop residue burning भी आएगा, stubble burning भी आएगा. What else? Good. An international dimension. हमने देखी थी ना, there were questions on WTO. यहाँ पर एक de minimis limits है, एक peace subsidy clause है, I'm sure आपने prelims के लिए पढ़ा होगा. Then it is also our image as a food exporter. Recently, there was an article in the Economist magazine which said that India has the ability to become a food superpower. Okay, so even this is included here. Then our agriculture, we have not always been self-sufficient. So if we are a food exporter, it also impacts our balance of payments. And in terms of food export, we are exporting, let's say, rice. अगर हम बहुत ज्यादा राइस एक्सपोर्ट करने लगे, राइस बनाने में, राइस उगाने में बहुत ज्यादा वाटर यूज होता है. So we are also exporting water indirectly. So it also has an economic significance. यहाँ पर there are also issues of sanitary and phytosanitary measures, right? Issues of subsidies that we are using for farming, right? Then we also have, we are a net food exporter, but we are not an absolute food exporter. We are importing apples, oil seeds. So agriculture, if crop diversification happens, it will be able to solve this problem of food import that India is doing, right? So both import and export and its impact on diplomacy. For example, if you have read about India's initiatives towards West Asia, our idea towards West Asia is that India should become crucial for the food security of West Asia, just as West Asia is crucial for energy security of India. That is why the synergy is very good here. So UAE a lot of times requests India not to put policy bans on export of food. When our inflation is high, we tend to put minimum export price conditions. So UAE मना करता है हमें, right? So it also has international diplomatic significance in terms of our diplomatic outreach. Understood? Now, अभी तक हमने क्या क्या पढ़ा? हमने पढ़ा that if I have to read about the agriculture sector, I need to know its complete thinking pattern, so that if I get a broad question, I can think in those terms and I have a broad way forward, right? कोई भी way forward मैं उन्हीं dimensions में लिख सकता हूँ. Then I have read the significance of the agriculture sector. कि why is the agriculture sector this significant? ये बात मैं पढ़ चुका हूँ. अब let me now show you your notes, and whatever I have taught so far, all of it is in the notes. Obviously थोड़ा सा detail कम है because you don't need this much, but enough for you to write, right? So there is this thinking pattern: input, production, and post-production. Then these are the components: input management, production and harvesting, post-production stage. Then the significance in terms of political significance, social significance, the idea of China, the difference between the bottom-up and top-down approaches, economic significance of agriculture, technological significance, environmental significance, international significance. Then a generic way forward for agriculture at the production stage, at the post-production stage. और just ताकि आप याद थोड़ा आसानी से रख लो, I've made a mnemonic for it called grow and growth. So grow से G से genetic enhancement, R से resource management, research, resilient agriculture, organic farming, women empowerment, and post production के लिए growth. So gram level procurement, research and development, policy support, open markets, warehousing, cold chain, waste to wealth, technology and human capital. This is also something that we've read. उसी supply chain के हिसाब से ये है. This is just for you to remember it easily. Now, So far, I have understood a thinking pattern, a generic way forward, and the significance of the agricultural sector for the Indian economy. Now I have to think about the next thing, which is I have to start thinking about every single thing that is written here. अगर agriculture ऐसा है, तो इसमें ये सारी चीजें मुझे पढ़नी है, right? Because questions also come from this. For example, there are questions on storage and marketing, questions on transport, question on food processing, questions on agriculture policy. तो मुझे ये सारी चीजें पढ़नी है. तो हम इसी ऑर्डर में पढ़ेंगे, right? You will always know where you are in the agriculture class. We will read like this only, in this order. We'll first read the input factors. From input factors, we will go to production, crop diversification, etc. Now, there are some topics that come again that are holistically covering everything. For example, the idea of agrarian distress or doubling of farmers' income. That also we'll do, but we'll try to go as much as we can in this order. So again, first input that we read about was land. तो अब हम पढ़ेंगे land. Land as an input in Indian agriculture. और लैंड एज एन इनपुट से ही रिलेटेड चीज हम पढ़ेंगे, लैंड रिफॉर्म्स इन इंडिया. ठीक है, वाई लैंड रिफॉर्म्स वर नीडेड, इस पे भी हमारे पास हमने देखा बहुत सारे क्वेश्चंस थे. अब नाउ अगेन यू हैव टू टेल मी, आई विल गिव यू 2 minutes, that if I have to think about land as an input, land as an input in Indian agriculture, what are the challenges? What are the challenges? जो आपको पता हो आप वो बताओ, then we'll talk about it in detail. Challenges क्या हैं of land as an input in Indian agriculture? I will give you 2 minutes. और एग्रीकल्चर की क्लास ऐसे ही चलेगी. आई होप यू आर ओके विद दिस, कि आप सोचो एंड देन आई शो यू, बिकॉज इट्स नॉट दैट टेक्निकल. वी हैव रेड अबाउट इट, वी रेड अबाउट इट फॉर प्रीलिम्स ऑल्सो. ताकि आप खुद सोचोगे तो आई थिंक व्हेन यू थिंक योरसेल्फ you are able to generate points, and then when I teach you, you will be able to remember better. यार एक सीक्वेंस में लिखो, डोंट jump to write whatever point is coming to your mind. Think for a minute, think of a sequence, and then write in that sequence. ऑल राइट, ठीक है। देखो, हमने एक सिग्निफिकेंस जैसे हमने सोची थी, वैसे ही हम चैलेंजेस भी देखेंगे इन द इनपुट ऑफ लैंड, एंड वी विल ट्राई टू डू इट इन अ पर्टिकुलर सीक्वेंस। ठीक है, देखो, अगर मेरे को लैंड के बारे में सोचना है, so firstly somebody is going to own the land, so there are challenges with regards to ownership and with regards to land tenure. तो ओनरशिप में और टेन्योर में क्या चैलेंजेस हैं? देयर आर चैलेंजेस ऑफ कंक्लूसिव लैंड टाइटल्स, there are challenges of land records not being modernized, land records not being digitized. There are challenges with regards to security of tenure. Security of tenure means that you are a tenant. Let's say I am a big farmer and you are a tenant living on my field. I can evict you at any time. Right? कोई security नहीं है, and you have lack of rights. तो ये भी एक issue है in regards of ownership and tenure. अब ownership and tenure से ही आगे issue आता है fragmentation of land holdings का. देखो, यहां पर एक कॉन्सेप्ट है कॉल्ड इकोनॉमीज ऑफ स्केल. आई एम श्योर मोस्ट ऑफ यू नो व्हाट दिस इज, बट जिनको नहीं पता उसके लिए मैं बता देता हूं. ओके, लेट मी गिव माय ओन एग्जांपल. लेट्स से राइट नाउ, और हम अज्यूम करते हैं दैट आई एम जस्ट वन टीचर who in this entire organization there is only one teacher called me, and there is one digital board and one camera. Okay, now if let's say there were 10 teachers, there are 10 teachers, but let's say there were 10 teachers, पहले एक था सिर्फ एक डिजिटल बोर्ड एक कैमरा. Now if there are 10 teachers who have to teach, are there going to be 10 digital boards and 10 cameras? No, there are only going to be probably 2 or 3 digital boards and 2 or 3 cameras, because same time पे तो सब क्लास लेंगे नहीं, and the same resource can be used by many people. So since the same resource can be used by many people, when you grow as an organization, or for example when you grow in terms of land holding, one tractor can be enough to service the field of 5 hectares. It can be enough to service the field of 15 hectares also. And for 50 hectares, you will not need 10 tractors, you will need only 3. So if land holding was bigger, agriculture would have been more remunerative. If I have a 5 hectare field, I need to buy one tractor and it will, let's say, give me 5 tons of produce. If I have a 50 hectare field, I only need to buy 2 tractors and this will give me 50 tons of produce. So if this gives me 5,000 rupees, this will give me 50,000 rupees. If the rent for my tractor is rupees 3,000, here my profit is only 2,000. But here the profit from this subtraction will be 44,000. Okay, sorry about this. Yeah. So this is the idea of economies of scale. So since there are fragmented land holdings, agriculture in India is not that remunerative. Then what happens further? If there are fragmented land holdings, there are issues of mechanization also. Mechanization not only in terms of purchasing the machine. Machine purchase करके तो ज़्यादा remunerative है ही if you have a bigger field. But in terms of mechanization also the problem is that in a small area, for example, in let's say a 1 hectare agriculture field, using a tractor does not make sense. The tractor is not designed for this. The tractor is designed for large fields. Most agriculture machinery is designed for large fields. Implementing it in smaller fragmented fields is a problem. It's a problem in terms of cost. It's a problem in terms of operation. Then, because land holding in India is fragmented, a lot of agriculture in India is unsustainable. Surplus nahi hota, there is indebtedness, etc. If your agriculture is unsustainable, what will it lead to? One, you will think, let me sell the land. When you sell the land, you will also sell to people who are trying to develop urban settlements. So fertile land will be diverted for residential or industrial purposes. So we anyway have 18% of the world's population, about 3% of the world's land. And even then, fertile land is getting diverted towards urbanization. This becomes one problem. Then if your agriculture is unsustainable because your field is small, what will you do? You will say कि यार मैं और pesticide लगाता हूँ, मैं और fertilizer लगाता हूँ, right? I want to get the highest yield possible. then it will lead to an issue of what? An issue of land degradation. Because you are bound to overuse fertilizers and pesticides because the field is small and you need a high yield. Okay. And lastly, other than land degradation, other than your own land, the use of fertilizers and pesticides at a high scale is also going to lead to certain environmental challenges, right? Now, the other problem in agricultural land, which is throughout the supply chain, is the problem of governance and planning. So, our policy making and our governance is a challenge throughout this entire spectrum. अब अगर ये बात मुझे समझ आ गई, now you need to tell me what should I do? What is the way forward? What are the things I should do to ensure that agricultural land does not become a problem in terms of input? Only in terms of land as an input to agriculture, what are the things I need to do? I'll give you 1 minute, no timer. मुझे बताओ जल्दी से क्या क्या कर सकते हैं हम? What all can we do to stop all of these problems from happening? Only in terms of land. Only in terms of land. Good. I can do land reforms, land record digitization, I can do land consolidation. That will actually automatically happen अगर मैं लैंड रिफॉर्म्स कर लूंगा तो. ठीक है, और मैं क्या कर सकता हूं? देखो, my agriculture was unsustainable, right? So I have to solve this problem here, right? And for this problem, I can go for agricultural research. I can ensure that agricultural technology is such that it can help me in terms of even small land areas, right? Because there was an environmental problem, I can practice climate smart agriculture, follow an agroecological approach. ये बात मुझे समझ आई. What else can I do? लैंड में प्रॉब्लम आ रही थी ऑफ नेचुरल रिसोर्सेस. So natural resource management can be done better. So soil conservation can be done better. Afforestation can be done. If the land has to be diverted for something, it should be diverted for an environmentally positive thing. If I have to do natural resource management, I can do watershed management so that my land does not degrade. यहां पर जो प्रॉब्लम थी लैंड डिग्रेडेशन की वो मैं सॉल्व कर सकता हूं. And lastly, I can develop better infrastructure and better policies to ensure that land management happens better. So when you have to write a way forward for land, think land. ठीक है, land सोचना and this will be done. All right. अब let us come back to where we were studying. अभी तक मैंने क्या पढ़ा है? मैंने थिंकिंग पैटर्न देख लिया एग्रीकल्चर का, मैंने वे फॉरवर्ड देख लिया फॉर अ ब्रॉड एग्रीकल्चर क्वेश्चन इन अ मल्टी डायमेंशनल फॉर्मेट, मैंने सिग्निफिकेंस ऑफ एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर देख लिया. जब मैंने लैंड पढ़ा तो लैंड के एज अ इनपुट मैंने कुछ चैलेंजेस देखे और मैंने लैंड से रिलेटेड कुछ वे फॉरवर्ड देखा. आई जस्ट लाइक टू शो यू सम डेटा पॉइंट्स नाउ related to land. यही land से related questions हैं. If you see, almost all of them are related to land reforms. Direct questions on land have not come yet. तो जो डेटा हमें यहाँ पर याद करना है, and ये डेटा बिल्कुल आपको 100% याद करना है, that is land owning in India. तो अगर हम देखें, right, this yellow figure shows large land holding, that is greater than 10 hectares. This gray figure shows medium land holding, so 2 to 10 hectares. And small figure shows small and marginal land holding, so less than 2 hectares. If you see, this shows the fragmentation that has been happening in Indian land. The green, this is 2002, this is 2018. So in 2018 and 19, the number of farmers that were small and marginal, that is less than 2 hectare of land, so very small land pockets on which they are doing agriculture, was 86%. And in yesterday's economic survey, this 86% has become 89.4%. Okay, तो क्योंकि हम क्या देख रहे हैं, that over time fragmentation of land holding in India is happening. Over time the land holding in India is becoming more and more distorted and smaller and smaller. Okay, then the other data is that we have only 2.4% of the world's land, but we have to use it to support 18% of the world's population. Okay, ये data आपने दोनों याद रखने हैं in case you get a question specifically on land. That question has not come yet. Question has come specifically on land reforms. Land reforms हम इसके बाद पढ़ेंगे. ठीक है, अब let's talk of land reforms. अगर मुझे land reforms पढ़ना है, I should first know what are land reforms. What does this term mean? Why do I have to do land reforms? In why do I, अब इतना तो आपको समझ आ गया होगा that this is related to agriculture. In why I have to do land reforms, I'll have to understand that Indian agriculture, what was it like at the time of independence, or what was it like in the British time? ब्रिटिश टाइम्स में इंडियन एग्रीकल्चर में कुछ प्रॉब्लम्स थी. इन प्रॉब्लम्स का सोल्यूशन निकालने के लिए एट द टाइम ऑफ इंडिपेंडेंस द आइडिया ऑफ लैंड रिफॉर्म्स वाज थॉट ऑफ. राइट, तो हमें ये चीज समझनी है. देन आई वांट टू रीड हाउ हैव लैंड रिफॉर्म्स बीन डन इन इंडिया. जब मैं हाउ पढ़ूंगा, आई विल रीड अबाउट द प्रोसेस ऑफ लैंड रिफॉर्म्स. When I read about the process of land reforms, then I will read about in this process what are the problems faced, implementation क्यों हुई, problems faced in terms of designing it, problems faced in terms of implementing it. This I have to read. Then I will have to read, okay, what is land reforms, why was it needed, how did we do it, क्या process थी, क्या problems थी. This I have done. Then I need to go further. In going further, I have to read that what are the possible benefits that have come, and these benefits in what parts of the country they have come. इस पे एक previous year question है. And what have been the challenges. Challenges पे खत्म तो कर नहीं सकते. What is the way ahead? Now, are land reforms still possible in the Indian system, or are they not possible anymore? ठीक है, ये सब मुझे पढ़ना है. Okay, now सबसे पहले let's read about what are land reforms. देखो, the idea, देखो, land in an agrarian society where agriculture is the primary mode of, let's say, income, land is the most precious commodity. Think about 1950s. अभी एक बार हम 1950s के context में सोचते हैं. Actually, you know what? Let's take a small break. I'll take a small break of 3 minutes, and then I'll come back, and then we'll do land reforms in detail. Okay, so in a society that is agrarian, one second. Yeah, in a society that is agrarian, जो agriculturally driven है, land is the most primary resource because all production is happening on land, and without land you cannot produce. So land must be equitably distributed. If there is no equitable distribution of land, there is not egalitarian land distribution, it will lead to automatic inequalities in the society. People who do not have land will have no income, or will have less income. They will have less social status, less political power, etc., etc., right? So land ki equitable distribution ke liye, the idea is of land reforms. The idea here is only to enforce the two DPSPs, which is Article 39 Clause B and Article 39 Clause C, saying that there should not be concentration of wealth and distribution of resources should be egalitarian and equitable. तो लैंड को अगर हम इस कॉन्टेक्स्ट में देखें, द आइडिया इज ऑफ लैंड रिफॉर्म्स. अब इंडिया में व्हाई वाज दिस डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन नॉट इक्विटेबल? व्हाई डिड वी नीड लैंड रिफॉर्म्स? इसके लिए लेट अस अंडरस्टैंड व्हाट वाज द कंडीशन ऑफ इंडियन एग्रीकल्चर एट इंडिपेंडेंस. So if we look at Indian agriculture at independence, firstly, there was a very prominent zamindari system. अब जमींदारी सिस्टम में क्या होता था? That this was the large zamindar, then he had below him a small zamindar, then a smaller zamindar, and finally there was the peasant. It was this peasant who was cultivating the land. Out of this cultivation, this zamindar, this peasant had to pay this person, this person, this person, and also to the British. So the first condition of Indian agriculture at the time of independence was taxation was very high. Secondly, a lot of sub-infeudation was there. There were also a lot of intermediaries. जैसे हम यहां पर देख पा रहे हैं कि बहुत सारे intermediaries हैं, right? Because there are a lot of intermediaries, the produce that has come, let's say whatever has been cultivated and produced here, that has to pay so many taxes. तो इस peasant के पास क्या नहीं बच रहा है? He is not left with any surplus. तो maybe he is able to sustain, वो भी हम देखेंगे, बट होगा भी तो bare minimum subsistence होगा, sustenance होगा. They will not be able to have enough to have any surplus. If they do not have any surplus, means they will not have profit. At the lowest level, if profit is not there, this is the person who is connected to the land. This is the person who is cultivating. If he has no profit, how will he invest in land further? If he does not invest in agriculture, if he does not invest in his land, in his system of agriculture, agricultural growth will stagnate. ग्रोथ बड़ी होगी ही नहीं, एग्रीकल्चर की ग्रोथ की स्टैग्नेशन हो जाएगी. ठीक है, ग्रोथ विल नेवर इंक्रीज. दिस वाज द प्रॉब्लम. देन सस्टेन भी वो ढंग से नहीं कर पा रहा है बिकॉज ही हैज टू पे सच हाई टैक्सेस, हाई रेंट्स, देयर इज इंडेटेडनेस. Because of having constant indebtedness, he has to go to the landlord consistently. ठीक है, तो लैंडलॉर्ड्स का इंफ्लुएंस हाई है एंड कांस्टेंट इंडेटेडनेस है. ओके, देन other than all of this, these problems of high taxation, sub-infeudation, intermediaries, growth stagnation, and indebtedness, the other major problem is that he has no rights. इन राइट्स को कभी भी हटाया जा सकता है. सो lack of rights, he can at any time be told that please leave, I want a different tenant. And if he is asked to leave, he becomes landless or he becomes, let's say, a sharecropper and his sustainability is damaged. अब the other problem is what? ये तो हमने यहां पर देखा. ऊपर देखते हैं. if I look at this issue, this is what? Absentee landlordism. He is absent from the field. इन्हें कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ रहा कि फील्ड में किस तरह की प्रोडक्शन हो रही है. Is the output becoming better? Is the field actually producing at its potential or not? Is proper investment happening or not? He does not care. Why does he not care? Because he has too much land. Because there is too much land here. He is close to the British because he is the zamindar class, higher social class, has a lot of land, has a lot of income. There is the problem of too much land. There is the problem of absentee landlordism. तो ये था Indian agriculture in the colonial times. All of these problems existed, right? अब इसीलिए हम देखेंगे in a country like India, even when the population was not high, famines were a regular feature. और ये सब आपने स्पेक्ट्रम में पढ़ा होगा, राइट? ये बात क्लियर है? अब आप मुझे बताओ that the Indian independence movement, where all have you read that the Indian independence movement has raised all of these issues? कहां Indian independence movement ने ये issues raise किए? Bhudan movement was part of Indian independence movement. सोच के बोलो, independence movement, national movement, not after independence. In Kheda, in Champaran, in Bardoli. Good. So there were some satyagrahas. सत्याग्रह हुआ इसके ऊपर. Let's say it happened in Bardoli. Then even in the civil disobedience movement, there were no tax, no rent campaigns. ठीक है, ये भी चीज है जो इंडियन नेशनल मूवमेंट ने किया. Then you must have heard about All India Kisan Sabha. They have also raised questions with regards to this, है ना? Then in the Karachi session of the Congress, and this I'm sure all of you have read about, nothing new I am telling here, ये सब spectrum है, I am assuming you know all of this. Karachi session में there was a discussion on fundamental rights. There was also a discussion on a new economic program. This new economic program included this idea of reforming Indian agriculture. Then there was the Fazipur session. In the Fazipur session, all of these issues are discussed in detail. It is in the Fazipur session that first time the word living wage is introduced. अब ये living wage हमारी constitution में कहीं है क्या? Can you remember this? Living wage is somewhere in our constitution. You need to tell me where. Okay. Then the Congress fights the elections in 1937 for the provincial assemblies, and even in their manifesto, they talk about dealing with all of these problems. And at some level, at maybe a very small level, the Congress in 1937 at the state level is able to deal with these problems. It reduces the tax, etc., etc. Okay, good. It is in the DPSPs, and this idea of living wage was first time discussed in the Fazipur session. Okay, अब so Congress fights the election. They are able to do it at some level, but implementation, of course, does not happen because central government has control, etc., etc. Then what happens? As soon as we are about to get our independence, close to independence, we see some violent peasant movements. For example, the movement in Telangana. Okay. Again, there are the same issues. The underlying issues are the same. There are obviously many other issues for this movement. The Tebhaga movement, the Telangana movement, all of these things are also happening at the time of independence. Right? So, अब finally क्या होता है? We gain independence. Once we gain independence, right? Once we, yeah, ठीक है, it's in DPSPs. Listen to what I'm saying now. Once we gain independence, what happens? Once we gain independence, we say that, okay, now we have to fix all of this. Okay. In fixing all of this, certain things are done. So the new government that is formed, it says that there are various challenges in Indian agriculture, and looking at these challenges, they say that we have to do certain land reforms. Okay. Okay. There is then economic program committee that is led by the honorable prime minister at that time, Nehru ji, and he says that इनको देख के ना कुछ reforms हैं that we need to do. So they come up with actually four, but fourth वाला हम बाद में पढ़ेंगे, but three very crucial reforms. Firstly, they agree that this person has to go. Zamindari has to be abolished. Zamindari cannot function because of all of these problems. So they say, okay, we need to do Zamindari abolition. Okay, this is the first thing. Then they say that this peasant at the bottom, the main problem is that he does not have land, right? So they say that if this person has land himself, he would not need to pay so much tax. He would have security of tenure. And in this person's land, he will also have surplus and profit, and he will invest it in its own land, and agriculture will become more sustainable. So they say that land must be given to the tiller. For this, they think of two things. This was also a problem, that there is too much land. So they come up with reforms like land ceiling. They say that we will put a ceiling limit, that beyond this limit, no person can hold a certain amount of land. And lastly, they say that even in the ceiling limit, people will be working as peasants under some large landlord. They say that the persons who are tenants in the fields, जो rent पे रह रहे हैं उस field में, and they are cultivating that field, they need to have certain security. So we need to do tenancy reforms. So at the time of independence, we come up with three very crucial measures for land reforms. One is Zamindari abolition. Second is solving this problem of too much land and land redistribution through land ceiling. And the third problem that we are trying to solve is tenancy reforms. अब अगर हम देखें, right, what was the need for land reforms at that time? ये हम already समझ चुके हैं. There are historical reasons. There are, चलो, we'll discuss it only. Let's discuss it in detail. What is the need for land reforms? We know there is some historical reasons of commodification of land, of the conditions that Indian agriculture held before independence. What are other reasons for land reforms to happen? There is obviously a legal need. अब independence हो चुकी है, constitution बन चुकी है, तो there is a legal obligation. The legal obligation comes from DPSPs under 39B and 39C. एक बात यहाँ पर याद रखना, that agriculture was always in the state list. This is why the Congress also, when it was fighting those elections, was able to do some land reforms. So there is a legal mandate, but it is to the states. Then there is an economic reason. Incomes will be better if you have land. You will be able to access agricultural credit. अगर आपके पास land नहीं है, तो आप किस चीज को दिखा के लोन लो, right? But you will be able to have income, better credit, more investment in agriculture. So even at the country level, investment and production in agriculture is going to get better. Then if it is proven that if the lands is owner cultivated, if the owner himself will cultivate the land, the productivity is generally much better. Okay, then it will solve the problem of sub-infeudation. Okay, now this all we have sort of seen, but there is also a social reason here. Land owning in India historically has been a caste driven idea. It was only some castes that were allowed to hold land. When British came and commodification of land happens, this caste division in society is lowered to some extent, but again it is not equitable, right? तो ये जो caste driven land holding थी, इसको solve करने के लिए भी बहुत जरूरी था कि land reforms हो और equitable distribution of land हो. ये भी जरूरी था that if you have land, do you get a certain social standing? आपका सोशल स्टेटस भी तो इससे लिमिटेड है। जैसे आपने पढ़ा होगा दैट देयर वर लैंड ओनिंग क्लासेस, so land owning is considered a part of our social standing also, and it is only the people who have these land holding and this social standing that are able to effectively voice their political demands. So if you look at castes in India today that are land owning, generally recognized as land owning castes, they have a lot of political power. I'm not naming anyone, I'm sure you're able to understand, है ना? And lastly, it is only when it is owner cultivated that technological interventions that are meant for the agricultural sector will come to the land. Correct? ये तो हमें नीड समझ आई. अब what does the government of that time say? The government says that we need to do land reforms in three things. Firstly, we need to do zamindari abolition. Then we need to do tenancy reforms, and we need to impose a land ceiling. ये तीन बातें वो बोलते हैं. ठीक है, अब इनको हम डिटेल में देखते हैं. लेट्स सी ऑल ऑफ दीज थ्री प्रोविजंस इन डिटेल, देन वी विल सी व्हाट इज द कंडीशन ऑफ लैंड रिफॉर्म्स टुडे. यहां खत्म तो नहीं हुई बात. लैंड रिफॉर्म्स इज एन ऑनगोइंग प्रोसेस. सो व्हाट आर वी डूइंग टुडे फॉर लैंड रिफॉर्म्स, वी विल सी आफ्टर दिस. ओके, तो सबसे पहले जमींदारी एबोलिशन को देखते हैं. नाउ let's talk of zamindari abolition. Zamindari abolition was one of the easiest land reforms to do and also one of the most successful ones. So this is largely successful. Why? Because zamindars were one jinke against socially there was always a negative feeling. Everyone was against the zamindars because they were the ones who were constantly siding with the British, and the British are now gone. So zamindari is abolished. Zamindar used to be what? It used to be a title. Obviously it came with its own advantages. zamindar hone ki apni advantages thi under the British regime, but zamindar, if you think about it in detail, zamindar is a title that the British gave you ki aap zamindar ho, based on your particular land holding, of course. But this title is also abolished in the Indian constitution, and zamindari is done away with. Why? Because intermediaries nahi chahiye, sub infeudation of land nahi chahiye, right? Rahul, if you don't know what sub infeudation is, read Spectrum. ये बहुत basic चीज है यार. Sub infeudation is this only, what I told you, multiple layers of intermediaries. Okay, now, so zamindari is abolished. What happens immediately as a result of this is that 20 million people who were earlier tenants of these zamindars become landowners. Because their titles and their lands are taken away and zamindari is abolished, and this is largely successful. But इनके भी rights हैं. अब इसके challenges देखते हैं. These people also have rights. You can't say कि नहीं, अब जमींदार थे, ब्रिटिश के साथ थे, तो we'll take away all of your rights, है ना? So it is said that if you were a zamindar, you can keep certain land for your personal cultivation. कि पर्सनल कल्टीवेशन के लिए आपको लैंड रखना अलाउड है, राइट? सो इफ यू लुक एट दिस, यहां पर मल्टीपल लेयर्स हैं, बट खुद भी कुछ तो कल्टीवेट करेंगे ये. तो इट इज सेड दैट यू कैन कीप द लैंड फॉर पर्सनल कल्टीवेशन, बाकी जो लैंड है दैट यू हैव टू गिव अप. अब प्रॉब्लम क्या थी? इस पर्सनल कल्टीवेशन को डिफाइन कैसे करें? व्हाट इज लैंड अंडर पर्सनल कल्टीवेशन? हाउ डू यू डिफाइन इट? दिस टर्म इज वेग, right? This had no particular definition. This were at that time even the limits were not prescribed. Land ceiling पे हम बाद में आएंगे, and जब हम land ceiling पढ़ेंगे आपको समझ आ जाएगा कि limit में क्या problem थी. So even the limits are not properly defined. So a lot of zamindars under the name of personal cultivation are able to keep a lot of land. बहुत ज्यादा land वो रख पाते हैं अपने पास, saying that this is my personal land only, and there is no way to verify it, right? So they retain huge tracts of land. This is the first challenge under this idea of personal cultivation. अब इसका advantage भी है, because they were ultimately personally cultivating, it had a positive impact. Since this was the rich class, they are able to finally invest in the land. बट जिस लेवल पे हमें जमींदारी एबोलिशन करके डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन करना था उस लेवल पे नहीं हो पाता. इट्स स्टिल लार्जली सक्सेसफुल. देयर इज दिस वन चैलेंज. नाउ व्हाट इज द अदर थिंग वी नो अबाउट जमींदार्स? द जमींदार्स आर अ dominant class, right? They have a lot of, at that time they have a lot of power and they have a lot of money, so they try and resist this land reform of zamindari abolition at all levels. The parliament has said that zamindari has to be abolished, but at the state level they still have a lot of influence. So at the state level they resist. They do judicial resistance also. So there is legal resistance at the state level, where in the state assemblies they use their influence. They are sometimes themselves members of state assemblies to delay this process. Judicially, they go to the Supreme Court, and in the Supreme Court they try and delay this process as much as possible, and through corruption and collusion with the lower bureaucracy. Also, they are able to say that, okay, don't transfer this land, show it in somebody else's name, etc., etc. So because of this bureaucratic collusion and corruption at that time, also this process gets delayed. So in terms of zamindari abolition, the idea is largely successful. This is what we do. There are some challenges that we have seen here. This is the first idea of zamindari abolition, which is the first component of land reforms. The second and third component are actually much more difficult to answer. So the second component is tenancy reform. Now, in tenancy reform, what happens? देखो, problems क्या थी tenants की? Problems of tenants are that security of tenure नहीं है. आप, you are working on my field on rent. I can tell you to go away at any time. There is no security of tenure. Then rent that I charge from you is also very high, right? बहुत ज्यादा rent charge करता हूं मैं आपसे, and you are not able to get any marketable surplus. Okay, then you have no sense of ownership. आप अल्टीमेटली टेनेंट हो मेरे फील्ड पे, और अगर आप टेनेंट हो मेरे फील्ड पे, आपको कोई अटैचमेंट नहीं है लैंड से, आपकी कोई ओनरशिप राइट्स नहीं है, और आपकी क्योंकि कोई ओनरशिप राइट्स नहीं है, you will not invest in the agriculture yourself, right? And lastly, actually pehle let's just study these three. These are the three main things that are the problems. Okay, so the government initiates tenancy reforms solving these three problems. They say that tenants will have security of tenure. One, the rent has to be lowered, and it has to be lowered till a normal level. And ownership, after a certain amount of time, let's say I have become a tenant in your field for 15 years, after a certain amount of time ownership also has to be transferred. Okay, and read this also in the context of land ceiling and zamindari abolition. तो ये कहते हैं कि कुछ टाइम बाद, लेट्स से उसने 12 साल टेनेंट बन के वो रह लिया, उसके बाद आपको कुछ परसेंटेज ऑफ योर लैंड यू विल हैव टू गिव टू दिस पर्सन. अब यहां पर आते हैं मेजर चैलेंजेस. दिस रिफॉर्म इज आल्सो सक्सेसफुल टू सम एक्सटेंट, बट नॉट दैट सक्सेसफुल. अब जब आपने ये सारी चीजें करनी है, यू विल हैव टू इंट्रोड्यूस लॉज फॉर इट. इफ यू हैव टू इंट्रोड्यूस लॉज फॉर इट, यू हैव टू डू इट ऑन पेपर. The challenge that comes is that people stop doing tenancy agreements on paper. They start doing undocumented tenancy agreements. ठीक है, तो डॉक्यूमेंट नहीं किया जाता टेनेंसी एग्रीमेंट को, एंड इट इज डन विदाउट एनी पर्टिकुलर रिकॉग्निशन. इट इज एन ओरल एग्रीमेंट, तो आप ये इंश्योर ही नहीं कर सकते. देन इट इज सेड, ऑब्वियसली अगर दिस इज द लैंड ओनर एंड दिस इज द टेनेंट, you have to give the landowner the right to evict. This was also a major problem कि security of tenure नहीं है. But अगर आप tenant को security of tenure दे रहे हो, आप landowner को भी तो कहोगे that okay, after giving notice, you can resume your cultivation of your own land. This is called right to resume land. आप normal rent or flat में भी देख सकते हो. Let's say you are a flat owner and you've given it to someone on rent. आप उन्हें notice देके बोल सकते हो that okay, now I want to live here. So you have to give the landowner the right to resume land. तो ये भी दिया जाता है इस legislation में. Now this is misused. And people are evicted using this right to resume land. And evict करने के बाद undocumented tenancy starts to grow. So again, this reform faces this challenge. Then again, जो land owning class है, they are people who are rich, so they have the problem of collusion with bureaucracy. वो तो होता ही है यहाँ पे. Next problem is that if you have to ensure all of this, if you have to ensure कि अच्छा यार इतना tenancy होगी, this is how land is going to be working, and this is what the rent you can charge, you have to give ownership after this time. For this you need proper data and land records. But ये है ही नहीं हमारे पास. We don't have data and land records, so this becomes a further challenge. Then what is also happening broadly after independence is that the population of the country is increasing. So when population is increasing, a lot of people are very ready, because of their poverty condition, they are ready to work as an undocumented tenant also. Okay, so these are the challenges that tenancy reform faces. This was its objective कि एकदम से eviction ना हो, rent ज़्यादा ना हो, ownership at some time मिल जाए. Now this was also successful in few places. It was successful largely in two states, in the state of Kerala and in the state of West Bengal. देखो, अब आप मुझे सोच के बताना कि वाई केरला एंड वेस्ट बंगाल ओनली. दिस यू कैन थिंक अबाउट. देखो, जब आप टेनेंसी के लिए रिफॉर्म करते हो एंड यू आर डूइंग इट फॉर सिक्योरिटी ऑफ टेन्योर, रेंट एक्सेट्रा, you are doing for people who are living there, right? Ultimately living on your land as tenants. But what about landless laborers? What about sharecroppers, which are not permanent residents? Tenants are permanent residents on your land. Landless laborers and sharecroppers are seasonal people who come during the harvest season and then they go. उनके लिए कोई legislation नहीं आती है. This is also another challenge. But in Kerala and West Bengal, it is successful. In West Bengal, largely we have to read about Operation Bargadar or Operation Barga. Barga is for Bargadar, that are sharecroppers. And यहाँ पे, because of Operation Barga, it is successful. There is political will in these two states. Operation Barga is specifically for sharecroppers and tenancy reform is successful. Yes, it is these two states that had communist governments or parties that with a communist ideology ruling them. Because of that, at least in this region, they are successful in terms of their policy. अब एक और इशू क्या आता है? मान लो आपने ये लॉ बना दिया that after 12 years of staying on this land, you will be getting certain ownership. You will no longer have to stay as a tenant. तो मैं क्या करूंगा? मैं आपको 11 years पे evict कर दूंगा, and I will make a new agreement with you after 11 years. Okay, and then you will continue to stay on as a tenant. These were the problems in tenancy reform. Okay, but still it is successful. It is successful in some areas of Kerala and West Bengal. Largely also we say the tenancy reform is 50% successful, 50% not. ठीक है? Okay. अब यहां तक तो थी आम जिंदगी, बिकॉज ये रिफॉर्म करना तो है आसान. अब देखते हैं मेंटोस जिंदगी. लेट्स टॉक ऑफ द मोस्ट डिफिकल्ट लैंड रिफॉर्म टू एग्जीक्यूट, कॉल्ड लैंड सीलिंग. लैंड सीलिंग का क्या मतलब है? एंड लेट्स गो बैक टू 1950s एंड थिंक अबाउट दिस. ठीक है? लेट्स थिंक ऑफ व्हाट द लैंड सीलिंग मींस. लैंड सीलिंग मींस that I will make a limit. I will put a ceiling limit on you on how much land holding you can have. कि आप कितना land hold कर सकते हो. Let's say I say that nobody can have more than 25 acres of land. Example है, this is not the actual figure, but this figure is significant and I'll show you how. ठीक है? इसमें I am doing this when I am doing this in 1950s. क्या प्रॉब्लम होगी 1950s में ये लिमिट लगाने में? थिंक अबाउट इट. ये सोच लिया तो पूरा इशू समझ आ जाएगा. नाइनटीन 1950s में ये काम करने में प्रॉब्लम क्या है? परफेक्ट उत्कर्ष. राइट टू प्रॉपर्टी इज अ फंडामेंटल राइट एट दैट टाइम. ये एक फंडामेंटल राइट है उस टाइम पे. हाउ कैन यू से दैट आपके पास 25 एकड़ से ज्यादा लैंड नहीं हो सकता? इट इज माई लैंड, इट इज माई प्रॉपर्टी. इट इज लाइक द गवर्नमेंट टेलिंग यू दैट यू कांट हैव मोर देन 2 phones. I can have 5 phones also if I want. And at that time it is a fundamental right. And secondly, zamindars ke against there is a social consensus, है ना? Socially everyone is against zamindars. Zamindar is a title. Land owning classes बहुत सारी हैं. They are not all zamindars. And land owning classes are powerful. There is no social consensus against them. So these land owning classes then heavily resist this idea of a particular land ceiling. Correct? There are some other problems also. Social consensus नहीं है, land owning classes आपके against हैं, right to property जो है, it is not a fundamental right. It is a fundamental right at that time. अब आपके पास land record ही नहीं है. आपके पास डेटा ही नहीं है. So what happens at the time of independence is that the Congress, the All India Kisan Sabha at that time, they say that nahi, land ceiling to lagegi. We will make a land ceiling and we will enforce this land ceiling. There were various ideas. Somewhere it was said 25 acres, somewhere it was said this. But this is a national limit. Agriculture is in the state list. So there are also issues of states and union disagreement. So issues of federalism. स्टेट्स आपकी बात ना माने तो क्या, एनफोर्स तो स्टेट्स को करना है, और स्टेट्स में लैंड ओनिंग क्लासेस का इन्फ्लुएंस भी बहुत ज्यादा है, राइट? सो बिकॉज ऑफ नॉट हैविंग अ सोशल कंसेंसस ऑन दिस, right to property being a fundamental right, land records not being available, data not being available properly, and issues of federalism, there are huge challenges in enforcing this particular land reform. And if land ceiling is not enforced, then redistribution of land cannot happen. अब जब आप लैंड सीलिंग का लॉ बनाओगे, लेट्स से यू मेड अ लॉ फॉर लैंड सीलिंग, लेट्स रीड सम फर्दर चैलेंजेस. आपने लैंड सीलिंग का लॉ बनाया, आप ब्लैंकेट सीलिंग तो लगाओगे नहीं. इट कैन नॉट बी के इसके बियॉन्ड नहीं होगा. सो फर्स्टली देयर वाज अ स्टेट वाइज वेरिएशन. दिस वाज अ मेजर चैलेंज. सेकेंडली, in some areas the land limit was very high. काफी हाई सीलिंग लिमिट लगा दिया था. सो बिकॉज ऑफ दिस हाई सीलिंग लिमिट उसको एनफोर्स करने का वैसे भी पॉइंट नहीं है. देन यू गेव सर्टेन एग्जेम्पशंस. एग्जेम्पशंस ऑन व्हाट? एग्जेम्पशंस ऑन कि अगर प्लांटेशन है तो आप पे नहीं लगेगी लैंड सीलिंग, पर्टिकुलर क्रॉप्स के लिए आपके लिए नहीं लगेगी लैंड सीलिंग. एंड द मोस्ट इंटरेस्टिंग एग्जेम्पशन, ठीक है, वाज if it is an quote unquote, and this is directly from the law, if it is an efficiently managed farm, if it is an efficiently managed farm with heavy investment. Now if this is written, that exemption is efficiently managed farm with heavy investment, and आप इस चीज को define ना करो, anybody will misuse this exemption. Then this land ceiling was imposed on individuals, not on their families. Okay, so since it was imposed only on individuals and not on their families, this was also a problem. What did they do? If let's say I have 100 acres of land and 25 acres is the limit, I'll transfer 25 acres to my mother, 25 acres to my father, and 25 acres to my brother, and no longer do I fall under the land ceiling problem. Then there was also an exemption with regards to cooperatives, that if you are working in a cooperative, then you can have a certain exemption. Cooperatives can host as much land as possible. There was also an idea at that time, जो surplus land है इसको हम collectivize करके पूरे village को दे देंगे, right? But अब यहाँ से problems देखो. What problems emerged? Bogus cooperatives started to be made. Transfer started to happen to family. Efficiently managed was not defined. So people started getting back their own land, right? And वहां पर personal cultivation का भी clause है. So they said personal cultivation and it is efficiently managed, no land ceiling. States का issue है and there are exemptions and there is no land records also. So this problem of land ceiling is not solved by this measure. अब क्या होता है? अब let us go and understand where we can link this to. ठीक है, यहां पर मेन प्रॉब्लम है राइट टू प्रॉपर्टी की. So within the Congress, land ceiling is something that the Congress wants to do. Within the Congress, there is opposition. So in the late 1950s, the Swatantra Party is formed. By people like N.G. Ranga and C. Rajagopalachari. And these people are opposed to the idea of land reforms within the Congress. तो post independence consolidation वाला part भी हम यहीं से पढ़ते हैं. ठीक है. Then what happens? They say that right to property is a fundamental right. So land ceiling is illegal. Then the government does something which you have to read in polity. The government brings the First Amendment and introduces the 9th schedule. So this context is also emerging from this problem of land reforms. These people, or people who are landowners at that time, opposing the land ceiling law, go to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court says, okay, we are upholding this. The government brings the First Amendment and introduces 9th schedule. After the 9th schedule is introduced, there are also two other laws that are introduced here. The government introduces 31A, government introduces 31B. What does 31A say? That on land acquisition by the government, after putting off land ceiling, if government acquires land, we are not violating any fundamental right. 31B talks of the 9th schedule. Then what happens? There happens the Shankari Prasad versus Union of India case. In Shankari Prasad, the Supreme Court says that constitutional amendment is anyway not a law under 13 clause 2. Okay, so this amendment is largely justiciable. Then the 17th constitutional amendment comes. In this 17th constitutional amendment, more laws are added to the 9th schedule. Okay, then happens another case called Sajjan Singh. The Sajjan Singh versus State of Rajasthan case upholds the judgment of Shankari Prasad. Then you read this entire gamut of cases that are also happening in this context only. So there is the Golaknath case. What is upheld in Golaknath versus Union of India? That Parliament has no rights to amend the Parliament, to amend the Constitution, and 13 clause 2 falls under the definition of law, right? And Parliament cannot curtail fundamental rights. Okay, this is done. Then ये होता है 1967 में. अब let us go to the context of the 1970s. What is happening in 1970s? All of this story is ongoing. एक तरफ से गवर्नमेंट का कॉन्फ्लिक्ट है, एक तरफ से इधर का कॉन्फ्लिक्ट है. 1970s में what happens? देखो, if you are unable to influence or unable to enforce land ceiling, and if you are unable to take away land peacefully, what will people do? People will start grabbing land violently. So it leads to land grab movements. This is also something we have to read in post-independence. And when land grab movement fails, you see that agriculture in India at this time, in the 1970s, is slowly becoming better. Why? Because the Green Revolution has come. Ab context dekho. You are not able to influence a land ceiling. You have land grab movements. They are also largely unsuccessful. The inequality in the society is increasing. And at that time, you have the Green Revolution. At that time, when the Green Revolution comes, what happens? Certain parts of the country have more income. And certain people who have large lands and are able to bypass the land ceiling because of the various flaws, they have a lot of income. So it leads to regional inequalities manifesting as one of the reasons for the Naxal movement. At this time also, in 1970s, Srimati Indira Gandhi is our Prime Minister. And she has a fairly socialist policy mindset. So, in this fairly socialist policy mindset, Srimati Indira Gandhi, recognizing the problem of Naxalism, and there are also the guidelines that have come from the National Development Council. Because of these three reasons, further this debate starts again. And again, the idea of land ceiling is now made. So the NDC again gives guidelines. Now specific guidelines are given. That if it is irrigated land, this can be the land ceiling. If it is double cropped, this is the land ceiling. If it is rain fed, this is the land ceiling. Right? Again, this idea happens. They say that distribution must be prioritized to SC and ST communities. Why? Because land owning is also connected with the caste issue. Right? And a certain compensation is also fixed. This compensation issue is manifesting even today in the Land Acquisition Act. Okay. Now, at this stage, emergency is also about to be imposed. President's rule is also used very frequently. So states agree and states pass revised laws. But still the problem of right to property being a fundamental right has not been solved. Okay. So there is a common retort, and that common retort is that you are violating our fundamental rights. So let's get back to this timeline now. What happens here? There happen the 24th, 25th, and 29th Constitutional Amendment Acts. Okay. What is said in these acts? What are we trying to do with land reforms? 39B, 39C. It is said that 39B and 39C, because of the land reforms context, remember that now, they say in these Constitutional Amendment Acts that these DPSPs matter more or will be given primacy over 14, 19, and 31. Why? Because land reforms has to be implemented. Land reforms is coming from this context. Naxalism is happening in India. NDC has given guidelines, and Srimati Indira Gandhi is running a populist government. At that time, she has to implement land reforms, and she still faces the challenge of the landowning classes. It is in this context that she abolishes the titles. She takes away the privy purses, and in her agenda is to remove poverty and alleviate poverty. उसमें major काम है land reforms का. So these three amendments are then introduced. Once these three amendments are then introduced, it then goes to court again. In the 29th, certain land reforms from Kerala are put in the 9th schedule. Then we go to court again. And then we go to court for the Keshavanand Bharti judgment, where the basic structure doctrine is espoused. Okay. Now, once the basic structure doctrine comes, Srimati Indira Gandhi then has to fight the Raj Narayan case. The emergency is imposed. And under the emergency, the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act happens. So Raj Narayan case here. And 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act here. What does 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act do? It says all DPSPs are greater than 14, 19, 31. And then she says no judicial review. So basically reverses the Keshavanand Bharti judgment. Then the emergency is lifted. Srimati Indira Gandhi loses the election. And all of these wrongs are corrected by the 44th Constitutional Amendment Act. What does the 44th Constitutional Amendment Act says? It removes right to property as a fundamental right. And finally, we have the Minerva Mills judgment. And here now we come to the current position that is held here. That not all DPSPs are not greater than this. Like all DPSPs cannot be given primacy. Only certain DPSPs can be given primacy. कुछ समझ आया ये सब क्यों हुआ? एंड वर यू एबल टू अंडरस्टैंड द कॉन्टेक्स्ट? आई होप थोड़ा अच्छा लगा होगा, थोड़ा लॉजिक समझ आया होगा चीजों का. So polity and post independence, the idea of Naxalism, the economic arguments for land reform are all consolidated into one. Okay. And now you will also not forget why 39B and 39C only, why only these three articles? Because land reform is done under this context. ठीक है. All right. Up. We are seeing that land ceiling is not becoming successful. इसमें land ceiling is not successful, right? Land reforms are successful, but only to an extent. Zamindari abolition is successful. The other areas, tenancy reform is somewhat successful. Land ceiling is not successful. This is what is seen. Then happens the Bhudan and Gramdan movement. What is the idea of Bhudan? The Bhudan idea is that we will enforce the trusteeship model and we will ask people to voluntarily give up. Voluntarily, you can give up the land that you have. So it is said that there is a 5-member family generally. So you give up 1/6 of your land, assuming that the 6th person who you are giving your land to is your family member. This movement starts, it is started by Shri Vinoba Bhave. It goes on. In the beginning, it gathers some momentum and some land is redistributed also. But there is a major challenge. The major challenge is that most of the land that is given like this is land that is already either in dryland areas, either the land which is not well irrigated, or the land which is already under litigation. Mostly this land is given. After some time, this movement loses its steam and it transforms into the Gram Dan movement, that you give it to the village. But that also is not very successful, and then the momentum is lost. So the peaceful movement is not successful, and then the land grab movement happens. Okay. So this also is fairly clear. Bhudan has come in post-independence in 2013 as a previous year question. So I've given everything in the text. I've explained the context, and you can read from here. Right? Okay. Now we have to read what were the issues that land reforms in India faced and what were the benefits of land reforms. Okay. अब एक बार हम अपने नोट्स देख लेते हैं and I will also give you small homework. Land का हमने ये देखा था. We have seen the challenges of utilizing land as an input. We have seen the way forward for land, which is acronymized as land. Then we talk about land reforms, the legal framework for land reforms, 39B and 39C. Then the phases of land reforms, I'll just tell you. अभी हम first phase पे ही हैं, intermediary abolition, tenancy reforms, ceiling on land holding and cooperativization. Cooperatives पे in this year's economic survey there is a lot of emphasis. So we'll read cooperatives from here, but आपको यहाँ पर वो bogus cooperatives वाली problem समझ आ गई होगी. Then, if we talk of evolution of land reforms in India, initially the first phase we have read about. The second phase also we have read about, right? This is in the context of the Green Revolution, etc. Then in phase 3, 1985 to 1995, what happens? It is said that conservation is also given importance in land reform. So watershed development, drought prone area development, desert area development program is done. Wasteland Development Agency is established. Then in phase 4, which is 1995 onwards, so land legislation, proper land revenue administration. So even things like the digitization of land records, things like Forest Rights Act, Swamitva scheme, and we'll read about all of this also. They are the continued or National Land Record Modernization Program. These are things that are currently going on, and land reforms is an ongoing process. It will never end. It will never be said that okay, land reforms are now complete. But we've read the original idea, and the questions that come, they are also mostly on the original idea of land reforms. Then we've read about Indian agriculture at independence. आपका होमवर्क बस ये है कि इसको एक बार रीड जरूर करना. I have explained all of the context to you. Please read the lines that are written here without taking a long break. If you are watching this recorded, as soon as I finish this, please read it once and you will be able to remember most of it also. Because there is nothing that we haven't read here. We've read about the need for land reforms. We've read about the reforms that were promoted in the pre-independence time. This will help you revise modern history from here. Then we've read about zamindari abolition, what happened, what were the weaknesses and what was the resistance that happened. Then tenancy reforms, what were the issues, the three objectives, where it was successful, what were the limitations it had. Then land ceiling, how it was imposed, what was the early idea, why immediate action could not be taken, why was there opposition to it. State level pe what happened, the challenges to it, the loopholes and the exemptions, and how it was not very successful. Okay. Then the new phase of reforms at this time, and this also not being implemented very properly. Then the Bhudan movement, we've read about this also. The methodology, it had an initial success, later it declined. Now only two things we have to read that are pending. One is the broad challenges of land reforms in India. अब ये आप मुझे बताओगे, आपको मैंने सारी कहानी बता दी. What were the challenges in imposing land reforms in India? Challenges क्या थे in enforcing land reforms in India? Issues of land reforms in India. What are the challenges we have faced? Although you now know everything, so you should be able to write this easily. बताओ. Political will. Good. Lack of records. Collusion. Political will was a challenge. Collusion was a challenge. Lack of reforms, lack of records was a challenge. Then the vague and overarching exemptions was a challenge. The idea of caste-based ownership was a challenge. There were federal issues also. Financial support was not given to this movement. There is also the lack of awareness in the tenants for political will to establish. And of course, as I'm sure you can see, it is a complex process. All of this is written in your notes, but I'm glad to see मैंने comments में ये सारे points पढ़ लिए, right? So you have largely understood. Now tell me, what are the benefits of land reforms? क्या फायदे हैं land reforms के? Aman, please stop spamming, yaar, and you can ask this in any MMP Plus orientation session or a mentorship session. Aman, I'll have to block you if you spam one more time. No, it will not abolish the caste system. नहीं, benefits पूछ रहा हूं मैं कि अगर हम कर पाते हैं, if we are able to do it, how will it benefit Indian agriculture or Indian economy in general? This is nothing but the needs that we have read, right? जो needs थी, वही benefits हैं, right? We've read about these things. कि क्या यहाँ need थी? There was social need, legal need, economic need. We read about how it is helping in alleviation of poverty. Poverty is a major problem because of landlessness, etc. that it will solve. Now, the last thing we have to read, we have read the failures and the challenges and the limitations. Now tell me in what, let's say I'll write a question, in what aspects, अब ये question आप actually लिखो, in what aspects can land reforms in India be considered a success? वो तो नीड ही थी ना यार, ओनर कल्टिवेटेड होगा तो बेटर होगा, एक्सेट्रा एक्सेट्रा. इन व्हाट एस्पेक्ट्स कैन लैंड रिफॉर्म इन इंडिया बी कंसिडर्ड अ सक्सेस? ये आप मुझे बताना. नहीं, डोंट डिवाइड इन 3 पार्ट्स. थिंक ब्रॉडली. जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल, if you look at our political system of land reforms is not an easy thing to do, right? You are taking away land which is people's property and then giving to others, right? So political reform is not easily executed, but we have done it with an independent judiciary in a non-violent manner. So this is the political advantage of it. Then if you look at the economic advantages of it, and that is why I was asking you to read the notes, because जो stats हैं वो आपको मिल जाएंगे. Zamindari abolition has been successful. Tenancy reform has been successful. It has led to productivity of Indian agriculture increasing. जो प्री इंडिपेंडेंस कहानी थी वो तो नहीं है आज इंडियन एग्रीकल्चर की. So this is another advantage. Then it has certain social successes. So because of redistribution of land, right, poverty, social status, stability in our social system has been ensured. The idea of colonial division of society has been transformed today. Then because of land reforms, we have been able to bring technology into farms because they are now owner cultivated lands, right? And even in terms of environment, there has been better land management. Okay. Now, if I go back to where I started from, okay, I have read what is land reforms, why they were needed, what was happening in the British times, and why land reforms was the right solution. How were they implemented? What was the process? The threefold process. What were the problems in design and in implementation of land reforms? The benefits that have accrued but accrued only in certain parts of the country, the challenges before it. Ab jo way ahead hai, this is largely connected with cooperatives, and this is where we'll read that. So our topic of land reforms is complete, other than the idea of cooperatives, and I just need a little bit more time to read the economic survey and add whatever new has been added to finish this cooperative topic also. Okay. So we have covered in agriculture so far. I'll just write on the last page. In agriculture so far, I have understood the thinking pattern. I have understood the significance. I have understood land as an input. I have a broad way forward. And I have completed the topic of land reforms. अब आपका बस यही होमवर्क है that आप घर जाके, और घर जाके क्या आप घर पे ही हो, आप as soon as this class is complete, take a small break, and after that small break, please read the entire document. It's 20-25 pages, and now you know the entire context. So even if you are watching this recorded and giving mains, next class पे जाने से पहले प्लीज एक बार स्किम कर लो, 30 मिनट से ज्यादा नहीं लगेंगे. मोस्ट ऑफ द थिंग्स यू हैव ऑलरेडी रेड, highlight the data, etc., and remember it today only. Okay. All right. Now if you have any questions, I'm here for the next 5 minutes. I'm just taking a 2-minute break. So the class is over. If you wish to leave, you can. I hope this was helpful. I'm taking a 3-minute break. इसके बाद थोड़े questions हैं आपके, वो आप पूछ लेना. That will do. I hope you had fun today. I definitely had fun today. ठीक है. Okay. Now tell me whatever questions you have and I'll answer. I'm here for 5 minutes and then we'll end the class. Backlog, अभी अगर means नहीं दे रहे हो तो आराम से time है यार. It's not a very heavy process for you anyway. दिन में 2 class देख लो. See, nothing is fully unsuccessful or fully successful. Land ceiling was also successful in some areas, but less successful than other reforms. Yes, Rahul. Manish, I have not made mind maps myself for Anthro, so I don't think I'll be able to share. But आप खुद बना सकते हो. I use an app called Xmind. तो विवेक बनाने में बहुत टाइम लगता है यार. I'm sure you can understand that doing this sort of research is not an easy job. Maybe when I become a teacher who has taught this 10-15 times, then it will be easy. But right now I am reading 600 to 700 pages for every class. तो मेरे लिए PDF जल्दी बना के देना. Although I'll try to send it a little bit earlier. रिया, I'll try. वो बहुत ज़्यादा रिक्वेस्ट हो गई हैं और वो एक रिक्वेस्ट एक्सेप्ट करने में it takes like the app takes 40 seconds, but I'll try and do it. Arman, we have tests in MMP Plus and they are scheduled as per the schedule of MMP Plus. So I can tell you what all I have read for this. Firstly, I read Land Reforms from Uma Kapila ma'am's book. I've shown you that book before. Very heavy 1200 page book. And then in that book called India Since Independence by Bipin Chandra, there are 3 chapters on land reforms. So I read that also. And from all of this, otherwise there's no way you can link so many things together. No? How do you link it to, like, I also did not know during my preparation days that this is also linked to the Golaknath case and the 24th and 25th Amendment. But now I think you'll be able to remember all of this a lot better. Land Acquisition Act we will do once we come to that. How to use forest पे वीडियो बना चुके हैं. Vivek, I did not take medical science, so I can't really recommend. Thank you, Akansha. I don't remember everything. I have my own notes also. And but this, most of it, as I'm sure you can also see, a lot of it is also very logical. A lot of it is logically connected. So ज़्यादा पढ़ने का फायदा होता है. How is there collision between Means Ready by December and MMP Plus? The schedule is the same. Aman, no. पॉलिटी लॉजिकली देखो, पॉलिटी होता ही लॉजिकल है. मतलब आई हैव नॉट रेड एनी स्पेसिफिक बुक, but I can tell you why, like a lot of things when you're reading polity, a lot of things can be understood logically. For example, chalo, this is the last question I'm taking. Let's do an exercise, okay? Tell me the features of federalism. And let us try, एक काम करते हैं, हम ट्राई करते हैं कि लॉजिकली फीचर्स ऑफ फेडरलिज्म को डिड्यूस करते हैं. ठीक है, डोंट मग इट अप. ठीक है, लेट्स नॉट मग इट. ओके, so I'm just reading your chat. You tell me what the features of federalism are, and then I'll tell you how I have constructed this pretty logically in my head. Simran, logical, it will take time, but it's very helpful in the long run. Division of power, center state relations. देखो, अब मैंने फेडरलिज्म पढ़ लिया है. ठीक है, I want to know about features of federalism and I want to remember this logically. What can I do? Federalism will definitely mean that there are at least 2 levels of government, right? So this is the first feature. that there will be government at the central and the state level. Now, these two levels of government must derive their power not from each other. If the state government derives its power from the central government, it's not true federalism. True federalism will be if both of them are deriving their power from a constitution. So constitution becomes an important feature. Now, in this constitution also there are certain important features. If it was an unwritten constitution, whatever law the central government would have made would have become constitution itself. And the central government can then effectively make a law abolishing the state government. So the constitution cannot be an unwritten constitution. It has to be a written constitution. This thing is clear? Then what is the other thing? The central government has the right to amend the constitution. So the central government should not be easily able to amend the written constitution where the features of federalism are there. Otherwise, the central government will amend the constitution and take away the powers of the state government. So the constitution must be rigid, at least in those areas where the features of federalism are given. Okay. Then what is the other problem? There can possibly be a dispute between the center and the state. So to solve this dispute between the center and the state, there must be an independent organization. So the judiciary must be independent. Ab socho, if I have all of these features, I have two levels of government, a written constitution, a constitution that is rigid in terms of federalism, and an independent judiciary. The central government cannot arbitrarily take away the powers of the state, and the two levels of government will function, and the two levels of government will function in their independent spheres. In this constitution, there also must be a division of responsibilities. Correct? These are the essential features of federalism, and it's all logical. You know? Did you understand this? For example, एक और चीज देखते हैं. Which MPs, if I talk about the election of the president, in the election of the president, certain members of parliament do not vote. These MPs are who? These are the nominated members, right? अब मुझे रटनी नहीं है ये चीज, मुझे लॉजिक लगाना है. Why do nominated members not vote? Because A, the president can be re-elected. And who has nominated these nominated members? It is the president who has nominated these nominated members, right? So I nominate you, and then you are voting for my election is not fair, right? So nominated members do not vote in the presidential elections, correct? So it is fairly logical. ऐसा इतना कुछ मुश्किल है नहीं, but it will take time, and it will also take you curious reading. Don't read only what is being taught to you to remember. Hand holding might be important, but spoon feeding is not, right? अगर spoon feeding होगी तो ये आप कभी खुद नहीं सोच पाओगे. So you need to sit and you need to think about things, and you need to take time with it. And since you are not giving means this year, you have this time. So whenever you are reading something, take time with it, research it a little bit, think about it outside what is written in the book also. That always helps. Okay, Satvik, I'll check. Anyway, so this brings me to the end of this class. I hope you had fun. I'll see you now next time on Thursday, and we will continue with the next input, which is water. Thank you. See you next time.